Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our City Council meeting. Today is Monday, February 6, 2023. It's approximately 1 p.m. Before we have our Pledge of Allegiance, I'm going to ask if you please rise for a brief moment of silence as we reflect back on the brave men and women of the United States Armed Forces as they protect our interests around the globe, as well as the courageous men and women of the Las Cruces Police Department and the Las Cruces Fire Department as they keep our city safe 24/7, 365. Councilor Flores, if you join me in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Bless you. Okay, we're going to have Jennifer Martinez from our communications office introduce our pets of the week.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I am Jennifer Martinez with the city's communications office. I've noticed a lot of new faces in our audience today, smiling faces, the same kind that would do great adopting a new pet. So lucky for me, I have two to introduce them to. I will start with Tanner. Tanner is a very social guy. They call him Tan the Man at the ASCMV, and everyone loves him. He will immediately come up to you and rub up on your hands or legs, whatever he can get closest to first. He's a good-looking boy who, as you can see from his photos, looks quite refined. All he needs now is a special home, and he promises to love his new family forever. That is all he wants to do. And then let's get to know Bubbles. At 1.5 years old, this girl is energetic. She already knows how to sit. She is still young and has a lot to learn, but she's very eager to learn it all with her new forever family. This girl is happy-go-lucky and is sure to brighten anyone's bad days. She is a little bit rambunctious on a leash, and it can affect her manners, but remember, she is still a pup that can use a little training. She would like her perfect new family to motivate her and teach her how to be their perfect dog. There are a couple of events coming up. One, Bosque Brewing Company at 2102 Tell Shores having an adoption event this Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then there is a Love is Forever adoption event from the 12th through the 18th where all adoptions are discounted. They are $25 for all animals that are spayed and neutered and $50 for those that are not. There's also a drive-through vaccination clinic that takes place from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Sunday, February 9th. And you can see that at the bottom right hand of your screen at the Field of Dreams, 2501 Tashiro Road. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, next is going to be Giselle Palomares, who's from the New Mexico Workforce Connections. She'll be giving out the jobs of the week.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Giselle Palomares. I'm with New Mexico Workforce Connection. For the jobs of this week, we have City of Las Cruces hiring an adult basic education instructor, paying $25 an hour, open until filled. White Sands Missile Range is hiring a child and youth program assistant, entry level 2, and that closes on December 28, 2023. Intrafusion GP LLC is hiring a patient services coordinator, and that pays $27,000 a year to $37,000 a year, depending on experience, and that closes on April 27th. Trinity Services Group we're hiring a food service worker, and that pays $13 an hour. That closes April 25th. La Casa Incorporation is hiring a South Valley administrative assistant, and that pays $13.50 an hour, depending on experience, and that closes February 24th. And Oxygen Therapy Associates Incorporated is hiring a medical equipment driver and customer service, and that pays $27,000 to $47,000 a year, depending on experience, and that closes on April 25th. And as always, to connect with the New Mexico Workforce Connection Office, you can always call at 575-524-6250, or you can visit them in person at 226 South Alameda Boulevard, or you can go online to www.employeynum.com or download the app. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Giselle. Okay, so Councilor Flores has a few proclamations that she'd like to read. And I think the first one's going to be the Optimist Day in the city of Las Cruces. Is Len Hampton here? Len, you want to join? Come up front. Bring your guests if you like.
There you go. Whereas volunteers working with young people who are our joy of today and our hope for tomorrow
are exuberant representatives of the potential to be reached. Can you all hear me? To be reached and dreams to come true. They are also unbounded in their enthusiasm to use their own talent, skills, and hard work to make a difference in others' lives. And whereas members of Optimist International will celebrate Optimist Day throughout the world the first Thursday of every February to promote their efforts in helping and recognizing the young people that make a difference in their communities and who will encourage a greater exchange of ideas between young people and adults. And whereas there are 2,400 Optimist clubs with more than 70,000 members in Optimist International and Optimist members throughout the world that carry out more than 6,500 service projects that serve 6 million people a year. Now, therefore, we, the Mayor and City Council of Las Cruces, New Mexico, do hereby proclaim Thursday, February 2nd, 2023 as Optimist Day in the city of Las Cruces. May this day instill pride in our city's optimists for all their accomplishments and for the impact they have to truly make a difference in others' lives. They're even shyer than I am. They don't want to say anything. Well, congratulations and thank you for being here. Oh, you will say something. Okay, go ahead.
Well, thank you for the proclamation, Mayor and Council. What I'd like to say is that every Thursday morning at 6:30 at IHOP on Telshore, we meet, and we would really enjoy seeing some new faces and some of you out there. Our main mission is to work with children to bring out the best in kids. That is our motto. Thank you.
Thanks, Len. Thanks, the Optimist Club. I will tell you that they were the club that spearheaded the Mayor's Top Teens back in 2006 because of them, and so we appreciate that. We've been able to continue it ever since. So, thank you.
Next is a proclamation that will be read to you by Councilor Beta.
Is Trend Lane here?
Yes.
And you wanna-
It is an honor to be able to read the proclamation for Congenital Heart Defect Awareness Week. And so I invite all of our participants up. Thank you. Whereas the well-being of our children, our most precious resource, is paramount importance of the city of Las Cruces, and maintaining excellent health among children is a top priority. And whereas in the United States of America, congenital heart defects, CHDs, are the most frequently occurring birth defects and the leading cause of birth defect-related deaths. And whereas congenital heart defects are being researched by numerous professionals to more accurately determine its origin, physical signs, and improve surgical options. And as a result, the origins and symptoms of congenital heart defects are becoming more easily identifiable. And whereas there is much to learn about the causes and effective treatments for congenital heart defects, and it is important for parents, pediatricians, and nurses to recognize the warning signs associated with CHD among newborns so they may provide proper treatment as early as possible. And whereas Las Cruces families and communities have been directly impacted by childhood illnesses and death caused by congenital heart defects. And whereas Congenital Heart Defect Awareness Week will also provide the opportunity to share experiences and information with the public and the media in order to raise public awareness about congenital heart defects. Now, therefore, we, the Mayor and City Council of Las Cruces, New Mexico, do hereby proclaim the week of February 7th through February 14th, 2023 as Congenital Heart Defect Awareness Week in Las Cruces, and encourage residents to join in the campaign to increase awareness of this serious health matter to improve early diagnosis and increase support to families affected by these conditions. Thank you. And As I invite you to speak, I do want to say for the parents, for the kiddos, everybody has been so strong and brave during this, and I know it's tough. So thank you for being here today. Enjoy.
Hi, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Tessa. Oh, yes, my name's Trini Lane. I told Tessa I don't know if I could do this without crying, so I apologize to everyone right now. But I lost my child a year ago. He died from heart transplant complications. I'm sure you guys saw that on the news. But this is an important thing, and I'm so glad to be here today in honor of his name, because there are many children who suffer from heart diseases in our town, in our country. So this is an awesome cause, and I couldn't have done it without Lexium Foundation or Las Cruces Transplant Group or the support of my community and everybody who's here. So thank you all so much.
Hi, everyone. This is Garrett, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce him to the community. Hi, Frank. Can you say hello? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Trini, for sharing that personal story with us, and again, our condolences.
The next proclamation is National Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month, presented to Roseanne Vasquez and Raquel Shedem. Are you here? There you are. Good to see you, Roseanne. Good to see you. ¿Cómo estás? Whereas February is National Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month, and whereas teen dating violence includes physical, sexual, and emotional assault, stalking, coercive and controlling behavior, harassment, and exploitation, and whereas both teen girls and boys report that they have been physically or sexually abused by a dating partner, and it affects all youth regardless of socioeconomic status, gender, sexual orientation, religion, or ethnicity. And whereas 1 in 3 high school students have been or will be involved in an abusive relationship, and according to the 2019 Youth Risk Behavior Survey, 8.2% of high school students who reported dating someone in the past year were physically hurt on purpose by their partner. And according to the 2019 Youth Risk and Resiliency Survey, 9.8% of high school students have experienced physical dating violence, and 11.3% have been sexually assaulted. And whereas teen dating violence occurs in person or online among persons in present and past consensual relationships, and perpetrators of teen dating violence are often also victims of teen dating violence. And whereas teens who suffer dating abuse are subject to long-term consequences such as substance use, eating disorders, suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety, and violent behavior. And whereas teens who have encountered abusive relationships are reluctant to seek help in fear of retaliation from their partner, shame, low self-esteem, and/or lack of resources, and victims of teen dating violence are likely to experience abusive relationships in adulthood. And whereas by providing teens with education about healthy relationships, by promoting safe and respectful relationships, and by changing attitudes that support violence, we recognize that dating violence can be prevented. Whereas teen dating violence is an issue that not only affects the teen who is abused, but also the family, friends, and others in the community. We must work together to prevent and help our youth overcome abusive relationships. And whereas the establishment of teen dating Violence Awareness Month in the city of Las Cruces and Doña Ana County will give young people, their families, teachers and counselors, and the community the knowledge and support they need to prevent dating violence. Now therefore, we, the Mayor and City Council of Las Cruces, New Mexico, do hereby proclaim the month of February as, quote, National Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month, unquote, signed by Mayor Ken Miyagishima and attested by our City County Clerk, Cristina Rivera.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Council. My name is Raquel Cherem, and I am a public health major at NMSU, interning with LC3 Collaborative. I'm joined by Roseanne Vasquez, the LC3 Collaborative Coordinator with Families and Youth Innovations Plus. LC3 aspires to reduce the stigma of mental health and also to increase access to behavioral health in Doña Ana County and the region by convening key stakeholders to build the ideal behavioral health system. Our LC3 Game Changer Action Teams are working in the areas of supportive and transitional housing, client advocacy and access, and with children and families. We are also the behavioral health sector of the Resilience Leaders of Doña Ana County, which was founded by Mayor Pro Tem Cassandra Gandara in 2017. The mission of Resilience Leaders is to reduce ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences, and a number of community leaders work across 10 sectors to address such areas as access to food, transportation, medical and dental care, behavioral health care, and much more. Together, we will continue to build a community that is healthy and safe so that residents of the Las Cruces and Doña Ana County can thrive. Thank you for proclaiming the same today by recognizing that violence has no place in our society, especially when it comes to protecting our most vulnerable populations, which includes our youth, teenagers, and young adults.
Okay, that concludes the proclamations. Thank you, Councilor Flores. And now I'll wait till you get up here. So we'll be reading the conflict of interest. This is where any member, excuse me, of the City Council, City Manager, or City staff has any known conflict of interest on any item on the agenda.
None. Aveda.
None. None. Graham.
None, Corn.
None. Gandara.
None, Flores?
Okay, and I have none. And the City Manager is still in federal mediation, so he's running a little bit late. This isn't TIFO. And so, so with that, we have no conflict of interest there. So now we're going to go to public participation. This is where members of the public can speak to council for up to a total of 7 minutes, no more than twice during the council meeting. Usually it's 3 minutes for your general discussion and up to 4 minutes for something item that's on the agenda. Now, unless you happen to speak on the appeal, then it may not be the full 4 minutes. It might be 2, maybe 3 minutes, depending on how many people wish to speak. So I usually start on my left, and I usually start on the first row. And I don't see anyone there, so second row, we see Lorenzo, and then Senator Fishman after that, or Commissioner Fishman. So, Lorenzo, did you have something you wanted to say? Thank you for passing out these cards.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm Lorenzo Alba. I'm the director at Casa de Peregrinos. Just wanted to talk about the cards I passed out to you. These are available not only to you, but to the public if they want to come pick some up at Casa de Peregrinos. They are trifold and bilingual, and they basically are so that you can hand out if you see somebody on the street or you know somebody that needs food services from Casa de Peregrinos. We created these as kind of an additional tool from when you run into the homeless out in the public, or there might be some families that live near you that need the assistance as well. It's easy to read, easy to find us this way, and they can make a quick phone call to find out where they can get services from Casa de Peregrinos. We are trying to do more of this kind of outreach. We are currently doing a program through the governor's initiative on food insecurity, where we're outreaching publicly with some produce stands all around the county. There'll be some coming into Las Cruces pretty soon that we can actually let people know what we're doing, and at the same time pass out a free bag of produce to them. These cards hopefully will help you. I know some of you guys use them, will begin to use them. The fire department's been using them for a little while with us already, and some police officers have been using them as well. If we need to get some more printed, we're glad to get them printed just because we think it's going to make a big impact on our community. If people know where to go, they feel a bit more comfortable. I've used them a couple of times already at Home Depot, which seems like that's the place I get caught up with the most, and give somebody a couple of bucks to go get something to eat and tell them, hey, you can come get some snack food and some other stuff at Casa Peregrinos. Here's a card. It's got a QR code on there. That way you can just kind of go on there and go onto our website with a QR code. That's always a really good way. Believe it or not, most people know how to use those, which is unbelievable to me, but they do. But also I wanted to take time to thank the city for all the support they've given Casa Peregrinos over the years and for the continued support. And real quick, our building is coming together, the community project. I'm going to send it. We're going to post up a little hype video today on our website and tag the city so that they see what's going on with it. Right now we're looking at about a May completion date, which puts us in the building hopefully at the end of June, beginning of July. And we're looking forward to sharing this community project facility with the community and putting it to work for you, because it is a lot of hard work, not only from the legislators that are up in Santa Fe right now working hard, a lot of capital outlay money, but also the city who has supported this project over the years. We've gotten a lot of calls from people that are making great comments about how the progress and looking forward to getting us into that building. So thank you so much again for everything that you do, and for being courageous enough to take on positions like you're taking right now, because it's tough to be in politics right now. So thank you.
Thanks, Lorenzo. Also want to take a moment to thank you and your team for all the great work that you do. You truly are one of our shining stars as far as NGO partners, so thank you for all the hard work as well. Okay, so Senator Fishman or Commissioner Fishman or King Fishman. Good to see you, Steve.
The proper term is Commissioner.
Okay. I just need you to state your name, please.
Yes, this is Steve Fishman, and I just recently finished my term as a commissioner for the PRC, and I was chair of the PRC for a couple of years. And I came here to pitch Senate Bill 165 very briefly. And Senate Bill 165, basically, its aim is to lower rates, bring in more renewables, and focus electric utilities on the particular needs of individual communities. And I have to say, as 4 years as a commissioner on the PRC, that it's very clear that our current investor-owned utilities, including El Paso Electric, they're profit-making enterprises. Their managers get compensated based on profits, and every proposal that we see from them doesn't necessarily try and undercut public purpose, but profit comes first. And we end up with some very odd proposals that really don't serve community needs. And SB 165 basically introduces competition into the picture to put pressure down to lower prices, to more quickly adopt new technologies, and provide cleaner energy. And I have to say our IOUs have been an obstacle to that. And every time at the PRC we put a rule in place, or try to put a rule in place, to speed things up to achieve those objectives, it always gets appealed to the Supreme Court. It always gets sabotaged at the last minute. Whatever their problems are, they kind of keep them under their vest, and then they bring them up at the last minute to sabotage the effort. And we're facing a situation where, quite frankly, we can get a lot further, a lot faster, if we start taking some of this responsibility away from the utilities. This is an industry Any city or locality that wants to form its own local choice utility has access to all the same resources as the major utilities. The main difference is they will use the resources to further the benefits to the community, while our current IOUs use those resources to fatten their bottom line. And I've seen it up close, and I really urge you to give support to this legislation, and I'm happy to talk to any of you individually and tell you about my experiences. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Sure, Councilor.
Mr. Fishman. Thank you, Steve, Mr. Fishman, for your presentation, and thank you also for your service to the PRC, your service to the people of New Mexico. On this particular bill, who should be to whom should the request be made? Who are the
Well, it's going to the Conservation Committee, hopefully tomorrow. When it gets through there, I'm going to try and be confident I'm testifying tomorrow. When it gets through there, it goes to Judiciary. Judiciary might be a challenge. Senator Cervantes and certainly all the members of Judiciary are worth contacting on that. By the way, the bill is sponsored by one of our local senators, Carrie Hamlin. A terrific service on her part, and it's a challenging bill, and it's great to see her take that challenge on.
Thank you so much, and thank you again for your service to the state.
Thank you all. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Okay, that was the second row. Looks like the rest is staff. Anyone in the third row? Just need you to state your name, please.
My name's Mary Rodriguez. Good afternoon, councilors and mayor. I don't know if you know, it's February Spay and Neuter Month. I'm talking about my favorite topic here. Very important, so I'm just going to read. I'm a huge proponent of mandatory spay-neuter practices because I know firsthand that it works. I understand that this practice has never been instituted in Las Cruces, which I find shameful given the number of animals overwhelming our shelter on a daily basis, and too often euthanized simply due to space. I'm constantly seeing posts on Nextdoor and on Facebook about dogs running loose, sometimes hit by cars, missing dogs, and people being bitten by dogs. This is a solvable problem. It takes implementation and it takes education, but I also know that this body cares about the community, doing what is best, and wants to be forward-thinking on the matter. Unaltered dogs and people who don't understand the reasons for and necessity of spaying and neutering their animals unknowingly contribute to these issues, as well as our overcrowded shelter. Other areas in New Mexico, such as Santa Fe, Gallup, Rio Rancho, Silver City, and Albuquerque, have instituted mandatory spay-neuter practices and have found ways to pay for it. I personally inquired with other counties in the state and found that the costs of these services are subsidized by money collected from fines and penalties when people break laws, such as breeding animals indiscriminately, allowing their dogs to roam free, having unlicensed dogs, and the like. In the city I moved here from, where I was born and lived for nearly 60 years, I personally witnessed ordinances go into effect that reduced the number of stray animals, both dogs and cats, and as a direct result, the number of animals entering the shelter. A low-cost spay-neuter clinic was built later in an especially problem area, further reducing the number. There are too many animals in our shelter, and too many great animals are euthanized almost every day in the city. Mandatory spay-neuter practices are a proven, effective way to manage this. Thank you.
Mary, thank you for your comments. I just want to let you know that I was just speaking with Mayor Pro Tem about, I know that in the past, the city has looked for more than one veterinarian, and I know they're doing their best, because we're working with Doña Ana County to come up with, to be able to attract veterinarians here so that we can move forward on the spay and neuter, but I appreciate your comments. Anyone else on the third row? And while you're on your way up here, I forgot to mention, if you're here to talk about the appeal, if you could wait until that actual time, we would appreciate that, because we can't take any comments regarding the appeal when it's out of turn. Unless you have to leave, please let us know, and you can see your comments, and I guess you will leave then. So,
What's the appeal?
it's a cannabis appeal.
Oh, okay. That's not me. I'm Diane Starbuck, and I'm here as a member of Animal Advocates for Change. The council approved a resolution supporting a TNR program. Oh, did you know it was Spay and Neuter Month? Right? You do now, right? Okay. The council approved the resolution, a TNR program, back in August of 2021. Mayor, you previously stated the original cost estimate you received for such a program was $500,000. The TNR subcommittee prepared a budget of $300,000 that was never considered. To date, we are unaware of any funding allocated by the city for this program other than the regular ASCMV and the animal control budget allocations. At the January 2023 ASCMV board meeting, the following excellent report of activities by Michelle Corella of the Cats Meow, a city board member, stated that they were pleased that there were service providers within the community that can help with spay or neuter activities. Throughout the lengthy process of updating the ordinance, as a council, you said all the right things, including assistance for individuals wanting to access spay and neuter services but unable to bear the entire cost. Individuals across the city are willing to help address the overpopulation and stop the reproductive cycle, but they need a hand, and with only one vet. All right, the ASCMV cannot keep up with the demand despite their extraordinary number of surgeries since the ordinance was adopted. Our co-founder, Kathy Stark, has stood before you several times and asked that you consider a voucher program that would apply to vets within the region, not only within the city, due to the shortage of vets and the cost barriers that exist. Animal Advocates for Change and I are asking that as you immerse yourselves in the budget process, you direct the city manager to allocate funds for spay-neuter services, including a voucher program and funding for in the form of grants for local rescues to provide spay and neuter clinics. You have new funding sources, including monies from plastic bags, marijuana sales, not the appeal, okay, the pet food tax funds coming in. What better time to use funds to support spay and neuter of community cats and owned cats and help the community help you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Diane. Let me just try to also explain this a little bit, and I think what we could do is have a joint work session with the board of the ASCMV as well as the city council, because the reason why I say that is because it's very difficult for us, because we usually partner with the county. So what I'm trying to say is, when you said if you could have the city manager direct funds, we need to have the total cost, and then we need to know that the county is going to be on board to pick up the other half. And so that's why I think it might be beneficial if we have a joint work session with the ASCMV board, which there's 3 members of our city council are of that board, as well as the county. So if one of you, or if you wouldn't mind emailing me, and then we can begin to set that up, and we'll have a work session. And that way there we can get some of these issues a little bit more discussed in depth, because I think it's important, and then you will hear about the challenges as far as what we can do as far as the veterinarians. Okay. Anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Jerry Wheelis, co-founder of AAFC, Animal Advocates for Change. And I wasn't going to speak today, but I wanted to briefly address what you were just talking about, Mayor. And we have, AAFC has had meetings with the county, and they are supportive of trying to increase budgets and discuss spay and neuters and revising their ordinances and looking into mandatory issues and those kinds of things. And just because the ASCMV doesn't have a vet right now doesn't mean that other organizations, spay neuter clinics and so forth, can't be brought in. We have been in the process of researching those, and we have names, and we're willing to reach out and try and coordinate that with you and for you. And there are other ways around it besides having a new vet at the ASCMV. So we just hope that you'll consider the program when you are allocating budget funds, because the ASCMV cannot support it on their current budget. So.
Thank you, Jerry. And this is one of these joint powers agreements that the city and the county have, that the power rests with the director of the Animal Services Shelter. Not the city manager nor the county manager. That's why we need to have this joint work session, so that we can get an idea of where everyone's at. This is one of the challenges with the board, because between the 3 council members and then the commissioners that are on that board, as well as the others, they themselves are the governing board, not the city or the county. So they have to come back with a request for money, which I haven't seen it, but I'm not saying it's not there in theory. So that's why I think it's important to have a city.
I think we kind of have a little sticking point on that, in that it's our assumption that the TNR program is a city program. It's mandated under the city ordinance. So there's kind of always been a debate as to who is overseeing that program and where the funds are coming from. Regardless of that, we do have, the AFC does have a good relationship with the ASCMV board, and we would be happy to sit down and discuss it with whomever.
I think that'd be better. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Okay, so that was the 3rd row. Anyone else? 4th row? Rick? No. 5th row? Yes, ma'am. Just need you to state your name, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. My name is Mary Underwood, and I'm a member of the GFWC Progress Club of Las Cruces. I think some of you are familiar with us and have heard from us several times. I am just here to bring up a couple of issues about the WIA building and would very much like your support. We have a family of skunks under the building, and it's pretty smelly, and it's bad. And when we go in for our meetings, we have to open up all the doors in the middle of the winter. So a lot of our members have ceased coming to our meetings because A, the smell, and B, the cold. So we are losing some of the participation of our members because of our building. Our building, not our building, it's your building. The city owns this building. We very much would appreciate it if you could put it as a top priority. We were told in the fall that it was going to be taken care of, and it hasn't, and now we're into February, and the skunks haven't been removed. I don't want them killed either. So you were going to trap them and take them out from under the building, and our lives were going to be better, and it hasn't happened yet. So we would appreciate that. I would also very quickly like to say that we were told that there had been money set aside to do the roof of the WIA building. The building is deteriorating pretty rapidly. It's very old. Our club is 106 years old, and most of the time they've met in the WIA building. So that lets you know how old it is. The roof desperately needs to be repaired, and we were told that was going to also happen somewhere back in the fall, and it never has. So I just wanted to bring your attention. We're a great group of people. We have 55 members, and we put about $35,000 into community projects last year. So we're very proud of what we can do for our community, and we love our building, or the building that we get to use. So we would appreciate some consideration on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. If you wouldn't mind emailing me, and then I'll try to find out where that status is as far as the roof. I do recall some money set aside for the WIA building. And then I just asked EFO if he could get with animal control to see about the skunk problem over there. Oh, it looks like, Mary, it looks like our Assistant City Manager, Sonia Delgado, already has the answer for you on the roof. So.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council, Sonia Delgado, Assistant City Manager. I've already sent an email over. I did speak to a couple individuals earlier today to get a status on the roof and the skunk, so I'll provide that. And I do have the contact information, so I'll take care of that right away.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you, Sonia. Great. Okay, so you're still on the 5th row, Sarah, or in the 6th row?
I was right next to her.
Oh, okay.
City councilors and mayor, my name is Sarah Smith. Since you're working on finding solutions to the increased crime and drugs in and near the Desert Hope Affordable Homeless Housing Project, I wanted to share some information with you from the perspective of a person who has been living in Housing First projects for many years. I will call this person Vanessa to protect her identity. Vanessa grew up in foster care before transitioning into Housing First apartments 20 years ago. She expected that her transition out of foster care would take her to where she would be helped in learning the skills she needed to become independent and ready to strike out on her own. Yet the reality was much different. Instead of being in an environment where she could learn and thrive, Vanessa found herself in a chaotic environment filled with drugs, violence, and prostitution. Alongside the elderly and people trying desperately to improve their situations, there were many people who were struggling with addiction and mental health problems. This is because Housing First offers unconditional housing to people, meaning that there are no requirements for people to abstain from alcohol or drugs in order to receive housing. In Vanessa's experience living in various Housing First projects for the last 20 years, fighting and violence are common occurrences. Drug and alcohol usage are rampant, such that those who are trying to escape from drug addiction and alcoholism are unlikely to succeed when the temptation is so often right in front of them. Some of the apartments have housed violent men, including men who are members of known hate groups as well as sex offenders. Vanessa has had her windows broken, her screen door has been torn off the hinges, she has suffered sleep deprivation due to excessive noise. The apartments and facilities are often not kept up, such that at times Vanessa has had to wash her clothes in her bathtub since the washing machines are broken. The living environment is so turbulent that Vanessa has turned to alcohol herself at times as a way to cope with living there. Vanessa is hesitant to speak about her experiences living in Housing First apartments. In the past, when she has made complaints about the living conditions to try to improve the situation, she has been retaliated against by the people who run the apartments. She has faced bullying and racial slurs from some of the staff of apartment complexes. Here in Las Cruces, the Desert Hope apartments have echoed the same problems that Vanessa has faced elsewhere. The nearby neighborhood, as well as residents of Desert Hope, have spoken up repeatedly about the problems there, including drugs, violence, trespassing, property damage, and prostitution. Although this Housing First project has provided shelter to homeless people, there are many other ways in which this model is failing our community and the people who live there. Like Vanessa, it is clear to people living here at Desert Hope that the Housing First model fails because of the drugs and violence that come along with it. Here, too, people living in Desert Hope are afraid to speak out for fear of retaliation. I urge the city to consider options that include treatment for drug and alcohol abuse instead of continuing to promote and fund Housing First projects. Thank you. Mayor, can I also make my comment for the appeal because I won't be able to stay?
Sure.
Okay, it'll be short.
Okay.
Thank you. I am in support of the appeal to overturn the special use permit for the cannabis business on the parcel of land near Tutti Bambini and the Challenger Learning Center. Given that these two businesses I just mentioned target children specifically, and that there are also residential homes within the 300-foot buffer distance, I don't think it would be in the best interests of our community to allow a cannabis dispensary in that location. I am not opposed to cannabis dispensaries in general, but I urge the city to take into account the overall well-being of the community when determining whether to allow exceptions to the 300-foot buffer zone for these businesses. Studies have shown that increased density of tobacco, alcohol, and cannabis businesses is associated with an increase in youth substance abuse. Given the proximity to two businesses catering to children and the nearby family homes, please vote in support of this resolution to deny the special use permit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And who's next? Anyone on that row? Yes. Come forward, please. So that's 5th row. Just need you to state your name, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nice to see you again. Members of the council, my name's Brad Cates, and I got my truck stolen a day or two ago. And it reminds me what the purpose of government is. It's the security of the people. Everything else is nice to have bike paths and different things, but the number one purpose of the formation of any government is the security of people. And I commend the police department for their work the other day, and we should commend our fire department. I've prosecuted hundreds of cases, and I've sat with the victims. And if you've not been involved in the criminal justice system, or if you've not been a victim of a crime, you don't understand the impact this has on our community. When someone is a victim themselves, or their loved one's been raped, or their house broken into and their things stolen, it undermines all of our civic cohesion. And the way to do it is rapid arrest, rapid prosecution, and punishing people involved. And our police and fire need all the support they can get to make that happen. Now, we know that there's other reasons that crimes can happen, not just bad people. I'm sorry that their daddy ran off, or I'm sorry they got involved in drugs, or like John Denver saying, I'm sorry about the way things are in China. But the point is that those are secondary. It's protecting the citizens from the crimes. Most people can't afford to buy that new TV that was taken from them, or the precious things that were taken from them, or their mental health that is undermined when they have a crime like this that occurs. And so that's what I want to ask you today. Keep your eye on the main ball, and that's the security of the people in our city. And let's not get sidetracked with other things. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members.
Yeah, Mr. Cates, thank you for sharing that story with us. You're welcome to email me, and I can share with you some of the issues that we're working on. If there's an investigative reporter out there, I would take a look at who instituted the Arnold tool. When the public voted for the bail reform, it didn't include that. And all fingers are starting to point that Supreme Court did, which, frankly, I don't think they're allowed to make laws. I think they're just supposed to interpret it. So if you want to email me and help me, I would really appreciate it. So thank you. Is there anyone else on that row? How about 6th row? 7th row? Juan? Yeah.
My name is Juan Garcia, Mayor, Council, City Manager. Thank you for approving a resolution supporting small businesses with funds to repair criminal attacks. And also thanks to Judge Goldbaum for her presentation. There was a lot of data to absorb. 2 areas of concern: a follow-up to a previous speaker in December who decided to arm himself, and many others have too, and the recent post on a local site, and I quote, "Luckily, they just opened the doors, stayed armed, and confront these people. When the red dot hits them, they ran off." For those of you that everybody knows, red dot on a laser is from a weapon. So is this where we are headed, where individuals are so fed up with crime that they're taking it upon themselves or planning to take it upon themselves? I met with Heidi from the Toy Box Learning and Child Care Center of Missouri. Our vans are being vandalized. Someone is drilling holes in the tanks and spilling gas over the parking lot. Not stealing the gas, spilling the gas. This is heartbreaking. We have been in the community for over 20 years and have never seen that. So what are our elected state officials doing about crime in our community? Las Cruces Sun headline on Sunday, and we all know that the Las Cruces Sun is not a far-right publication. Their headline says, GOP bills on fentanyl drug trafficking in New Mexico were blocked by Democrats. So you have to think about that. And another quote, House Democrats on the House and Consumer and Public Affairs, Representative Ferrari and Rubio, they care little about improving public safety in meaningful ways. Another quote in the Albuquerque Journal, Representative Ferrari was against HB 57, quote, because it could result in alleged thieves being injured. Now think about that. Concerned about the thieves, the alleged thieves, not one word about the victim. Senator Hamlin pushing for SB 116, where lawful gun young owners will become criminals for the legal possession of, quote, assault weapons. Senator Cervantes, he's concerned about the Arnold tool that you just mentioned, Mayor, and is proposing crime victims file lawsuits against gun makers. Okay, that's going to help us a lot here. Senator Zoles, assault weapons are only weapons for war. They have no other purpose but killing people. This is the same senator that spoke about promoting the abortion clinic that the governor has proposed. Since abortion is such a huge thriving industry promoted by our governor and endorsed by the New Mexico Progressive Socialist, the Satanic Temple opened a new abortion clinic to kill babies in ritualistic abortions. The Satanic Temple, can I finish? I've got about 2 sentences left.
Sure, go ahead.
The Satanic Temple also is pushing its beliefs on young children. Recently, the group began opening clubs in elementary schools. It likens the, quote, ritual slaughter of unborn babies to communion or baptism for Christmas.
Oh, okay, well,
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was the 7th row. Anyone else on the 7th row? Come forward, please. I just need you to state your name.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Kitsey. I am the manager of New Mexico Thrift and Boutique. We're new. We were in business for 22 years in the town of Mesilla as a hair and body shop. And in order to give back to our community, we opened a thrift store by the traffic circle called New Mexico Thrift. It was a huge success. Portions of those proceeds would go to our local veterans. We outgrew our space quickly. In October of last year, we opened our New Mexico Thrift and Boutique, a combination of our boutique from Mesilla and our thrift store that we have outgrown. Now, in the 22 years that we were in Mesilla, we never had any problems. No break-ins, no vandalism, nothing. Since we've opened in the shopping center at 2132 North Main Street, the Fiesta Food Shopping Center right next to Rena Center, on December 25th, our front door had rocks thrown through it, big boulders provided by our landlords in the landscaping. They're the river rocks. We fixed it, spent $900, repaired it. The police came, of course. We filed a police report. Because they didn't get in, which was their goal, it was vandalism. So our landlord doesn't care. He's in El Paso, not going to help us. We made an insurance claim. We paid the $900, got the glass fixed. Then on January 20th, we come to work, and there's a huge hole in our front window. Same thing, river rocks from the landscaping. The owner has since removed the rocks from the landscaping. If the landlord has a problem, well, he could go to their house and get them. We're tired of them providing the ammunition for them to get in our store. Well, then, not only a week later, I came to work, and I was worried because I was a couple minutes late, and the owner was there, and she's in tears because this time they didn't just break the front door, they came in the back door, and they stole a lot of stuff. They got our brand new Apple computer, where we were going to use for online marketing, vintage jewelry that we had just been donated. We're looking at 10 grand in damage right now. And the reason I'm here to tell you this story that's so frustrating, first of all, thank you for the $2,500 storefront grant. I don't know if the criteria for eligibility is going to fit our store, unfortunately. I hope it does, but we haven't been in business where we are since March of 2020, so probably not if that criteria is strictly adhered to. But it is our hope that it will, because it has been quite traumatic, to the point where I trained a new girl and I showed her where the hornet spray was. If somebody comes in here and you feel threatened, spray them in the eyes. And it's like that all over Las Cruces right now. I don't leave my house without something to protect myself. And it's at work, at home, at the grocery store, at the pharmacy. It's getting bad out there, and I'm scared. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Anyone else on the 7th row? Yeah. If there's anyone else that wants to speak that's in the 8th or 9th row, if you want to come forward to the 1st or 2nd row, that would be appreciated.
Hello, we're Tessa and Adrian Gonzalez. We're here to discuss the tragic event that happened on April 24th of last year at Veterans Park. I've been in communication with the Veterans Advisory Board with the proposal to try and get a memorial built for our daughter so we can honor our daughter. The request was denied, and I didn't really know much about the VAB before all this happened, and I didn't like some of the answers that I was given, so I did a little bit of research, and I read the city ordinance, and the city ordinance states that the VAB is there to bring recommendations for physical change to Veterans Park. They're supposed to present it before you all. I didn't see anywhere where it says that they are actually the final authority on a decision. So regardless of how they feel about the proposal, they're still supposed to bring it to you all, where you all make the decision. I don't know if that was delegated to them, if they have the authority to deny a request or a proposal. I didn't find any document that supported that, so I just wanted to see if maybe we can get it on either next city council agenda, or if any of you council members would like to come to the next VAB meeting and we can discuss their role and maybe possibly consider a memorial for our daughter. It started off as a simple request for a bench and a name placard. Because of the denial, we actually want to dig a little bit deeper and find ways to honor not only our daughter, but local heroes, people who support military. I'm active duty currently, been serving for 14 years. And Ella is our baby girl, Ariela Adam. She's daughter of an active duty airman, granddaughter of a Army soldier, and a great granddaughter of a Navy veteran. I think their opposition is they are misunderstanding our request, and they think we want to put her on one of the pre-existing memorials. We're not trying to honor her as a veteran because she, obviously an 18-month-old little girl, can't serve in the military, but she does serve by supporting me, as well as my wife and my other children, some of our family and friends that are in the audience, friends that we consider family. Anybody who's ever listened to a troop in a time of need, I think that local veterans should say thank you in some way. And not only that, but I said local heroes, there's also law enforcement and fire department, local heroes that give the ultimate sacrifice. And it shouldn't just be the veterans organizations in the community. I think we need to revamp it, modernize it, maybe put some representatives that are from different generations. That way there's some diversity. And I went over my time. Thank you all for hearing me out.
Mr. and Ms. Gonzalez, I know that the council and I were devastated when we heard about the tragedy that happened at the Veterans parking lot. And thank you for sharing with us your story. I will tell you, please email me. I'm confident we might be able to do something. I don't know if you're aware that the city is building a parking lot immediately. It's going to be expanded, and I'm confident that we can do something to honor your little girl. So if you can just get me an email. And you did the right thing. The Veterans Advisory Board is an advisory board to myself and council. And so you come in here, I'm confident we can do something to honor your daughter.
We would appreciate that. If I may ask one more question. I don't know if it's true or hearsay, but I was under the impression that the playground area is going to be removed completely. There will be no public play area for children. Is that correct, or am I misunderstanding?
I'm going to let the city manager respond to that. That's more of a day-to-day operation issue.
There have been, thank you, Mayor. There have been talks about that as we expand the parking lot, but nothing has been set in stone yet. No decisions have been made yet about that.
Okay. I didn't want to take up too much of your all's time, but something that we are proposing is and we're not asking the city to fund this. If we pay for this ourselves, so be it. But for a safe place for children to play, we were thinking of proposing a butterfly garden. We can discuss in the email. But thank you all. If you can support, we would greatly appreciate it.
Mr. Peely, or Mr. Mayor? if I
Yes,
may.
Councilor.
Mr. Peely, my understanding is that the playground would be moved away from the area that is the main, just away from the main park. My understanding is that that there won't be a park. It's just a question of the location, perhaps near the new parking lot, because I believe the parking lot is also going to be expanded to the north of the park. So I think that's my understanding.
Yes, Councilor Flores, that's been the discussion, is that once we expand the parking lot, it'll go on the other side of that existing wall, and that we would need that space as well to where the park is. But we haven't had any plans set in stone yet. We're just, as you know, we're currently fundraising for that, or trying to get funding for that parking lot.
Okay, well, if we could keep that in mind in light of what Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez have just shared with us. Thank you, Mr. Peely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez.
I don't know if you have my email address, but let me give you this card here. Okay, thank you again. Okay, so that was 7th row. Anyone else in 8th row, 9th, 10th, last row? Anyone else on my left? Okay, so I'm going to go to my right. It looks like first row is empty. Second row? Anyone on second row? Third row? Fourth? Fifth? Sixth? Seventh, to the lady who's counting? Yeah, there you go.
Good afternoon. My name is Jaylene McIntosh. I'm here to publicly speak about the already approved pilot program for hygiene stations around our city. I have some real concerns, and I know these are shared by many of my fellow citizens. I understand the council's desire to provide these facilities is so the homeless population will have a place to take care of their personal hygiene needs. But this is a Band-Aid at best. Our city needs to enforce the already established laws prohibiting public urination and defecation. And our city needs to maintain each and every public restroom facility. The personal hygiene needs of our city's homeless population are already being met through numerous shelters and public facilities. We have plenty of public restrooms that aren't open, maintained, or protected. For some reason, our city chooses to keep them locked rather than maintained. And if they are available, they're usually filthy, under-maintained, and generally unsafe to use by the law-abiding, tax-paying citizens. Last week, I emailed each one of you my concerns. Mayor Miyagashima's reply included a report from the City of Seattle, which stated their estimated cost per hygiene station was $120,000 per month. $120,000 per month for one hygiene station. The numbers the mayor further provided reported the city of Los Angeles spent $10 million on hygiene stations, which yielded 60,000 showers. That's $167 per shower. It would be cheaper to rent our city's homeless a hotel room. If the city's purpose for these hygiene stations, according to what has been communicated publicly, is to prevent the homeless from doing their business on our city's streets, then our city needs to increase the penalty for the violations. Furthermore, I would hope the City Council would work in the best interest of its citizens. First, our police to enforce the existing laws and ordinances that prohibit the unwanted behavior to which you are trying to band-aid. Second, hire more city workers to update, renovate, and maintain existing structures. Finally, if you all really want a hygiene solution, consider a permanent public facility downtown to make that area cleaner and safer for the city and the downtown businesses. In closing, I understand the council has no idea the cost nor the details for this approved hygiene station pilot program. Further, it has not been made known the number nor the location of the proposed hygiene stations. This is unsettling. Approving something before the financial costs and long-term effects are considered and conveyed to the citizens, paying for hygiene stations is a waste of money. If we can't afford to keep our mini parks, and I'm nearly finished, restroom facilities open, maintained, and protected, then there is no way our city can afford this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McIntosh. Let me just state, and you hit the nail on the head, really. This was an approval for the city management team to begin to look exactly how we're going to do this. And I know there are some, what they call NGOs or non-governmental organizations that want to help partner with the city. So I sent that to you from Seattle and LA to share with you how the city of Las Cruces is, obviously we're not the same size population as Seattle or LA, but how we're one of the smaller cities in comparison to them that have this opportunity to do this. And I think it's fair to say that we can't force these residents to utilize these facilities, but if they're out there for their availability, we would hope that they would use it. But anyways, I appreciate that. Again, it's something here that I think the city is not looking to spend. And again, I have to tell you, the city of Seattle is about 800,000 people, and so that probably makes sense that they spend $160,000 a month. We're 1/8. We're a lot smaller than Seattle, of course, and I think they're like 8 times larger than us. So, anyways, thank you for your comments. So that was the 7th row. Anyone else on the 7th row? 8th row? Last row. No one else on my right. Okay, that concludes our public participation. And Ifo, before I read the closed meeting statement, I just need to make sure that you have no conflict of interest on any item on the agenda.
I don't, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I have a closed meeting statement to read. City of Las Cruces met in closed session at 11:01 a.m., January 23rd, 2023. The following members were in attendance: Councilors Flores, Bencomo, Graham, Abeta, Gandara, and myself. Councilor Coran came in at 11:55 a.m. Also present was Brad Douglas, Deputy City Attorney, Jocelyn Garrison, Acting City Attorney, Tony Ortiz, Outside City Attorney via Zoom, who left at 11:40 a.m. Ifo Pili, City Manager. The meeting adjourned at 12:40 p.m. And for the record, Las Cruces City Council made a closed session, only discussed those limited items as stated in the posted notice, to discuss limited personnel matters regarding the former city attorney, which is closed pursuant to NMSA 1978, Section 10-15-1H, number 2. Okay, now we're going to move to accept the agenda. However, let me just say, staff has asked to remove item 8.3, which is Resolution 23094, which is a resolution to amend and renovate the Main Street incentive program. They need a little bit more time before they can bring it to council. So if you make a motion to accept the agenda, if you please include removing that in its entirety from today.
Move to approve the agenda with the entire removal of 8.3.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Graham, second by Councilor Abeta to accept the agenda as presented with the removal of item 8.3, which is Resolution 23-094 for discussion at our next council meeting. Oh, removing it in entirety, okay. Christine?
This is on the motion to approve the agenda as presented with removal of item 8.3 in its entirety. Councilor Abeta?
Yes.
Councilor Graham?
Yes.
Councilor Bencomo?
Yes.
Councilor Coran?
Yes.
Counselor Flores?
Yes.
Counselor Gondeta?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, next item, 8.1. This is a public hearing, so it's 2:09 p.m., so the public hearing is now in session. Is there any members of the public who wish to discuss either for or against a beer and wine liquor license with on-premises consumption only to Lorenzo's Italian Restaurant located at 1753 East University Avenue, Las Cruces, New Mexico, 88011? Okay, seeing none, public hearing, it's 2:10 p.m. Public hearing is now closed. So entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 23-092.
So moved. Corin. Second by Flores.
Motion made by Councilor Coran, second by Councilor Flores. If there's no comments from members of the public, seeing none, Christine?
This is on the motion to approve Resolution 23-092. Counselor Beta?
Yes.
Counselor Graham?
Yes.
Counselor Bencomo?
Yes.
Counselor Coran?
Yes.
Counselor Flores?
Yes.
Counselor Gondeta?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, we're at 8.2, Resolution 23-093. Need a motion.
Move to approve, Graham.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Graham, second by Councilor Bencomo. I think Josie Trevino will be discussing. I hear like a little echo. What's happening with our sound system? Yeah. Sounds okay? Oh.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. My name is Josie Trevino, Comptroller. The city's FY22 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, also known as ACFR, for the period ending June 30th, 2022, has been prepared by the city. It has been audited by our external independent auditor, Patillo, Brown & Hill, and as required by NMSA, has been officially released by the Office of the State Auditors for presentation to Council. At this time, I would like to say thank you to all those involved in this audit process, and I would especially like to thank the accounting and treasury staff who are here today, and if I could please have them stand up. It's usually around 15, not just us three. They didn't get the memo to come down here. Now I would like to turn your attention over to Mr. Gardner from Patillo, not Patillo, Patillo, Brown & Hill, who will be presenting a summary of the city's FY22 audit results. Mr. Gardner.
Thank you, Josie. Mayor, councilors, the presentation I have here is some of the highlights that we went over in the various exit conferences throughout the, I think it was in early December 1st or late November. But what this is auditing standards require that we as auditors make certain required communication. And as I go through this process, I'll try and explain why some of these I've included, because I think the ones that I have here are very important for the council. So as we go through, please interrupt if you have any questions. The first thing that the standards require that we talk about is what's the results of the audit. So this year, we issued an unmodified, or what we call a clean opinion. So our report in the financial statements state that your financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with the standards that we as your auditors have to follow. Bottom line, this is the highest level of assurance that we as auditors can give. This is exactly the type of report that the city wants to receive, so this is a good thing. Two other reports included in your financial statements are the one on the left, it's called a Yellow Book report. What happens is in New Mexico, the state auditor requires us to follow Yellow Books on all audits completed in our state. The reason is because regular auditing standards don't require that we test internal controls. We can take one transaction from the most significant cycles like disbursements, payroll, et cetera, and we're done. Well, in New Mexico, the state auditor wants us to actually pick samples. And as we go through that report, we're not giving an opinion on internal controls. We're just spelling out how we test those above and beyond what regular auditing standards require us to do. We do have 2 findings. Another report or another component of this is the New Mexico State Auditor takes the threshold of findings and basically takes it down to the ground level. So Yellow Book standards, both of the findings that we're going to talk about would not have to be included in the report, but in New Mexico, the state auditor wants transparency, and so they want all findings, any exceptions that we have, to be reported. And we'll talk about those in a few slides. The report on the right is, we are giving an opinion, relates to what we call a single audit. Because the city spends more than $750,000 of federal funds, we have to do a compliance audit to make sure that you're following those federal grants. And as you can see, we had also an unmodified opinion. Again, the highest level of assurance that we as auditors can give in that report. So it's exactly the type of report that the city wants to receive, and it did not have any findings. So in summary, the 2 reports are exactly what the city wants to receive. The reason this next communication I included it, because the standards really want you to know as a council, how are your records being maintained? And as you can see here, we did not have any difficulties encountered in performing the audit. As we asked for support, as we asked for documentation, that was given to us in good order. It was given to us in a timely manner. So what that tells the council is that your records, your financial records, are being well maintained by the city. This next one is talking about audit adjustments. If we as auditors have to come in and change the numbers because we're posting lots of adjustments, it's really important for the council to know. And the reason is because you're making financial decisions on numbers throughout the year. And as you can see here, we did not have a single adjustment. So again, the whole reason for this presentation is to let the council know that your accounting system, the way it's functioning, and the internal controls that you have established are working, and that you can rely upon the numbers as you go through and make financial decisions throughout the year. The last couple of slides are relating to, as Josie mentioned, the financial statements. It's called an ACFR. Well, an ACFR actually is more stringent and has more items in it than what just the New Mexico State Audit or even our auditing standards that we have to follow. So the city has elected to provide the citizens more financial data, more information, so your financial statements are actually thicker than what is required by our standards. So the city goes through and prepares the ACFR and gets submitted to GFOA, and GFOA will give an award out for making sure that you meet all of their requirements. And that, actually, this is a very prestigious award. The GFOA is a national organization that goes through and analyzes your financial statements to make sure that you have met their requirements and that you get the reward. As you can see on this slide, you are one of only 18 governments in the state in 2021 that received this award. So not very many entities go above and beyond like the city does. And again, 1 out of 18, and there's approximately 700 governments in the state of New Mexico. You're only one of 3 municipalities that receives that award. And you also are one of very few that goes after what they call the Triple Crown. So there's 3 different awards programs. There's one for the budget, there's one for the financial statements, and then there's a PAFR, which is a smaller, more summarized report that's supposed to be easier to read for your citizens. So the city is only one of 5 that has received the Triple Crown Award. So again, your staff is going above and beyond what they really have to do, and that's something that the city should be proud of. Only 5 in the whole state of New Mexico. During the year, we did have a couple of findings. The first one is relating to gas cards. There was a department that had some transition, and for, I think it was a 4-month process or a 4-month time frame, the reconciliations of the gas cards and the receipts wasn't being performed. And I know that that has been rectified and that problem has been dealt with. And so it was just a transition and period. But when we selected those transactions, we did have exceptions. The other one was relating to payroll. So there's an elected position, the judge, that technically, based upon state statutes, the same as the council, you can't get a raise until you go through the election cycle, and the next period is when that raise can take effect. We had a raise that was given to the judge this year in violation of New Mexico state law. In the prior year, we had one finding over I-9s. That one has been resolved. And again, if I go back to the prior slide, both of those findings were brand new. And so if I was in your position as a counselor, what I would want to see is my team dealing with the issues. Are they taking the findings and dealing with them? And sometimes they take a couple of years. By the time they're made aware of what the situation is, late in the year, the audit's not done until December, late November, you're already 6 months just about through the year end. And so sometimes it takes some time, but as you can see, the last few years, when findings have been brought up, your management team is dealing with them, and they're getting addressed, and they're getting resolved. And that's something, again, there's so many transactions that go through the city of Las Cruces. There's going to be things that happen. What you want to know as a council, how are we responding to those? And as you can see, all the findings that we had last year were properly resolved, and I believe the 2 findings that we have this year are going to be resolved again. So again, I think your management team is dealing with them. We've got a couple of graphs that we're going to go over on the financial numbers. This first set of graphs is what we call government-wide financial statements. And as you can see on here, it's under the full accrual basis of accounting. This is not a methodology that is presented to you throughout the year. The only time you see these numbers on the full accrual for your governmental funds is audit time. So in this method of accounting, we have long-term assets showing up on your balance sheet, and we have long-term liabilities. So things like the building, your debt payments, debt principal outstanding amounts are included as assets and liabilities. All of your governmental funds are mushed into one column, into one set of accounting numbers. And so what happens is we have, 26 special revenue funds, 1 debt service fund, and then some capital project funds that are all combined and included in this one set of financial statement numbers. So all the different individual funds that you budget on are pushed together. At the end of the year, the city had a little bit over almost $1.2 billion in assets. Assets went down a little bit from the prior year, and really the biggest reason is because you spent some restricted cash that you had to spend from the prior year. But other than that, really the assets of the city remained fairly consistent. Your liabilities did decrease about $37 million. Some of that was related to unearned revenue going up, and then also your portion of the para liability at the state level decreased about $46 million. To be honest with you, I anticipate that to go back up next year with the way the markets happen. But when I like to talk about para, really what the council's responsibility with para is to make sure that you're making your monthly payments and that that's getting contributed. The city is not going to have to write a check for that para amount. You're just going to have to continue to write or to pay those payments every month as payrolls happen. And so it's a liability, but it's only recorded in the financial statement. And really, it's a FYI type of information because, again, your responsibility as a city is to make sure that you're making the payments to para timely. And as we go through and we test, we do have to look at, that's something that the state auditor does add that we as auditors look at, and we did not have any issues with your payments into para. The next set of statements are governmental funds. And your governmental funds is how you adopt your budget. You know, your general fund, your different special revenue funds. This basis of accounting is what I like to call more like checkbook accounting. There are, again, a lot of funds that the city accounts for. They are individually reported in your financial statements. And the ones that I'm going to go over here are really just the general fund because that is the operating fund of the city of Las Cruces. And so with that, long-term assets and long-term liabilities do not show up here. So like I said, this is kind of like checkbook accounting. If it's going to get in my checkbook close enough after year end, so like property taxes collected within 60 days, it shows up as an asset. If it's a long term, like a building, it's not going to show up. So as we go through, this first comparison is your balance sheet, again, just for the general fund, just for the operational fund. Your assets have gone up about $15 million. your liabilities have gone up, and then your equity or your net position, the equity of the general fund has gone up. As far as the assets, again, the primary change relates to a decrease in cash because we spent those restricted funds that we talked about a little bit earlier, but your capital assets and things like that increased in this particular fund. Your liabilities have gone up. Really, that's mostly attributed to para. Para went up, para changed the most in this particular liabilities. At the end of the year, like I said, this is only for the general fund. You reported about $72 million in assets. The biggest share of those is cash and investments of $44 million. You had receivables of $24 million, and then you had a couple of minor ones with inventory and lease receivables. At the end of the year, the city reported a total of $10.2 million in liabilities. The biggest part of that is accounts payable. Your accrued liabilities were next at $3.4 million. You had deferred property taxes of $600,000, and then deferred leases of $2.2 million. So the deferred leases is a new concept that had to be implemented this year. So that is something new that you have not seen in the past. But really, the change in your liabilities, they went down. They went up as we talked about. But most of that's really related to the fact of just timing of your accounts payable. The general fund revenues increased from $123 million to $152. The expenditures also increased from $91 million to $115,000. The real reason for the increase in the revenues is really GRT. That some pretty much all of the increase there. And the increase in expenses was actually planned. The council had adopted a budget that was even higher than this, $126 million. So even with the increases in expenses, they were planned, and you still were under budget in total for the general fund. The last couple of slides are just relating to your enterprise funds. The separate enterprise funds there's 7 of them, and they're reported separately in your financial statements. We're only going to go over the gas fund. As you can see, the gas fund assets did decrease about $8 million, and your liabilities also did decrease about $27 million. The reason for the decrease in your assets is mostly attributable to accounts receivable. If you'll remember last year, we still had some slow pay related to COVID and some of those timing issues. This year, that was corrected, and we kind of got back more on track. And then your liabilities decreased primarily because of the para and retiree health care, their portion of those liabilities. The last slide is gas fund revenues. As you can see, they did increase slightly from year to year, but your expenses increased quite a bit. And the majority of that is due to the cost of gas. Last year, the cost of gas went up about $4 million. And so therefore, we had a bigger net loss in this fund because the cost went up and our revenue didn't match that increase in cost. With that, I'll open up to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Councilor Bencomo, Councilor Flores.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you so much for the presentation. And again, big round of applause to the team. I think they all joined you. They heard your call. Yes, you want to stand? She's telling you to stand. Yes. Thanks, everyone. Good work. My question is just related to the 2 flags that you found. I appreciate you naming on the gas card that it was action was taken to remedy that. You didn't mention that on the second item, though I know there has been some action steps from our Finance Select Committee meeting. Can you talk about that a little bit, as much as you are able to?
Me too. My understanding is that there was a process that was circumvented, and the process is established. I think that in the future that it's been reiterated what that process should have been. So I think in the future that will get turned down by the HR department, and then that we should not have an issue.
Right.
Mayor, Councilor Bencomo, we have a HR director here, and she can talk on that process that they're doing now.
Thank you, because I know there's a couple more steps, I think, that I think is important to let the public know.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Councilors. Joe Richards, HR Director. Yes, that process has been reviewed, and we are taking additional steps in the future to make sure whatever information is submitted by the courts is verified. Direction in the past had been to basically process what was requested, but now we will go through a thorough review of any information that is submitted. It's already been corrected, and the judge is repaying any amounts that were overpaid.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Richards. I appreciate that. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Councilor Flores?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you so much for your presentation. And thank you, Joe, for that information about the judge. So my question really goes to the presenter. Can you explain, I don't know about my colleagues, but I'm not good at accounting at all. I mean, I dropped out of the course when I was in law school. It was like, I don't think so. Why is para a liability? I mean, I recognize that the employees pay into it, so that makes it a liability.
So, Councilor Flores, what happens is para establishes rates, and those rates are paid in when each payroll happens on a monthly basis into para. What happened is it's probably been 4 or 5 years ago, standard setters for us, we call it Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or GASB. GASB passed a law that stated that even though it's at the state level, they have to go through and allocate. So I believe at this point, para is about $6 billion underfunded. So what happens is that $6 billion is allocated to all the participants. And so what, in your financial statements, we have a pretty significant liability that has to show up in one set of financial statements. But the truth of the matter is that council is really responsible for writing checks and making sure that you establish a budget to make those monthly payments as your payroll goes through. That $6 billion allocation is really at the state level, and it's for informational purposes only. The only time you'll ever see that number is in audit time. When you adopt a budget and you go through and you report to DFA, those numbers are just based upon what you're actually submitting to para and what you have to pay to them based upon each payroll. The only reason we have to include this is because the Governmental Accounting Standard Board requires the allocation of that $6 billion to show up in one set of financial statements in your particular audit report.
So that's a practice that applies to all municipalities or all para participants?
It's a national standard that everybody has to follow throughout the whole United States.
The whole, oh, I see.
Yes.
Okay. The other question I have is liabilities are accounts payable and assets are accounts receivable, and those have to be reconciled all the time?
Yes, those are reconciled throughout the year by your accounting staff. And so what we do is we go through and audit those at the end of the year to ensure that the year-end balances are accurately reported. But yes, those are reconciled throughout the year.
And those two findings that we had, does that in any way impact our rating or our standing?
I'm not a rating person, but my understanding is I don't think that those would. Mm-hmm. They're not significant. I think ones that would really affect the city would be what we call material weaknesses, where there's just a really big breakdown in internal controls that we report them as material weaknesses. These don't rise to that level. These, again, if we're in another state, to be completely honest, we wouldn't have to include them in your audit. But New Mexico, the state audit rule wants transparency. They want all findings, regardless of whether they meet the threshold, the standards that we have to follow or not. They don't care. They basically take that threshold to the ground level and say any and every exception that we as auditors come across, we have to report in your financial statements as a finding.
I I see. And can you go back to the page or slide that shows what a wonderful municipality we are, or at least our department here, that one. So can you go through that again and really blast it in terms of, because there's several, when we, as Councilor Bencomo mentioned, the mayor and she and I are members of the Finance Select Committee, and this was a big wow in our meeting. In fact, I think we talked about it for about 10 minutes. We were so excited. So, and the reason is because, I mean, I think that our media, I haven't seen Channel 7 here for a while. I wonder if Tom's okay. Anyway, but can you go through all of those awards that the city has gotten and how it's the numbers, the percentage? I mean, it's like just like 2 awards and how many, you know, whatever, the percentage or whatever, the rating or whatever.
Sure. Councilor Flores, you're exactly right. It's something that the city should be very proud of, because it's not something that's very easily obtained. It takes a lot of hard work. And the whole reason for these awards is to be more transparent with the city, with your citizens, and to give them information to analyze the city financial statements. And so there's a lot of additional reports, there's a lot of extra effort. But as you can see, we have over 700 governments in the state of New Mexico, and for whatever reason, we only have 18 participants in that program. A lot of people are not willing to step up and make that extra effort and take the extra time to do the reporting that's required and then follow the suggestions that they come up with, because there's always new standards, so it's always constantly changing. It's not like you get this award and you can just sit down and be comfortable. The standards are changing. There's always new additional information that's required to be included in your report. So it takes a lot of effort, a lot of work. And so to be one of only 18 out of over 700 governments, you definitely should be proud of. But we also talked a lot at the exits about the Triple Crown. So there's the whole reason for the Triple Crown, again, is financial transparency to your citizens. So the budget award, you all meet the budgetary criteria that the standards or GFOA sets. Again, it's for the public's use, to make sure that we're being transparent and giving them good financial data, good financial information. And then the PAFR, the whole reason for that is, you know, your financial statements, there's 3 different methodologies of accounting. And it's really very, very, very confusing. And so what that report does, again, it takes extra effort. It's not something that the state of New Mexico requires or anybody else, but it's additional information that is to be given to the citizens to make that information a little bit more user-friendly, a little bit more easily, to interpret your financial status. And so, again, only one of 5 New Mexico governments to get that. And it wasn't all that long ago, there was only 3 of them. So there have been a couple more that have been added. So the city should, again, be extremely proud of going after those awards and receiving them.
Mayor, Councilor Flores, so to add, it's actually, so yes, one of 5 New Mexico governments, but only one of 2 municipalities in New Mexico that get the award.
It's up to you. And that other one is not Albuquerque, so.
No, it is not. I believe it's a district. It's a special district.
And I don't think it's Santa Fe either.
No.
So there.
No.
Thank you. Sure. Any more questions? 2 things real quick, and regarding the issue regarding the municipal court, that's something there that EFO has decided to move forward. Looks like he might be able to take that part over, but they're working on that change. That way that couldn't happen again. And then also regarding the liability, that's something there that the city tried to ask DFA if we could start setting aside the amount to remove that liability, and DFA said no. So I think maybe next year this council needs to ask our legislators to allow those cities that can afford to start putting aside that money for that liability to do so. And I think that would speak volumes. But before we end, I think IFO wants to do a presentation right now to the financial services team so they don't have to come back. So we know you're working hard at what you do, so you don't get disrupted. So IFO, you want to go ahead and present that? And Leanne, of course, you're the leader of the financial services, so you want to join as well? Yeah, however.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we had it on my city manager report, but my thunder is all gone now. And so we decided to do it here so we don't have to have your staff come back and forth. That's okay. But before we do that, if we can, if it's okay, Mayor, if we can have everybody, I know you mentioned you'd be good with that, to have everybody maybe introduce themselves and what they do real quick.
Yes, that would be great.
So everybody knows our team. And we can start wherever, I guess.
Go this way.
Joe Padilla, the fixed asset accountant.
My name is Maria Sanchez. I'm an accounting supervisor.
I'm Veronica Ulloa, and I'm a temp accountant.
Liam Beasley, and I'm a senior accountant.
Frances Harris, accountant.
Roberta Marquez, accountant.
Laura Gutierrez, accountant.
Hello, I'm Sarah Arviso. I'm an accountant.
Armando Lerma, also an accountant.
Josh Saffel, accountant supervisor.
Erica Hawkins, treasurer.
My name is Amador Espinosa, senior accountant with the Treasury Department.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leanne Demush, and I'm the Director for Financial Services. I want to take this time also to thank also the mayor and the councilor for all the support, especially those that are on our Finance Select Committee, Councilor Flores, Councilor Bencomo, and the mayor. We greatly appreciate all the support that you give us, and especially to our boss, Barbara De Leon, and our other boss, Mr. Peely, who give us a lot of direction and support us in so many ways and help us with a lot of paper bags, breathing into them when we have issues. So we greatly appreciate all the support, especially from Mr. Peely and from Barbara. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Leanne. Mayor, if I can just say a couple of things. I appreciate the thanks, but you know very well I have nothing to do with this, right? You know that your team, and I know, Leanne, I really appreciate that. I appreciate finance being sort of our unsung heroes in our city. As you know, there's hundreds of thousands of transactions and dealings that go through the city. And so, I mean, starting off with our audit, our findings, you know, showing that how much we improve, how much we attack issues head on. But as a city manager, it is a huge weight off my shoulder and from my team as well to know that we have a finance department like we have. And so I just want to say thank you on behalf of the rest of your departments here. You know, not only city manager's office, but all the other departments that, you know, all roads lead to finance. And, I was going to go over all the, what the CAFR award and PAFR and budget award means, but I think we already talked about that. But as you know, the auditing standards, when you look at our audit, it's based upon certain standards, that government standards, and how we comply. When you look at these GFOA awards, it's based upon certain standards of transparency, as that auditor mentioned, how transparent we are. One area we haven't talked about is the PAFR. We haven't talked about that much, but that popular annual financial report, and that's a report that extracts certain reports to make it even more transparent to those without financial background. And so that's an interesting one, and one that it really does go above and beyond. We have to produce, our budget every year. We have to produce our financial reports, but going after the PAFR as well, that just tells the city, that the community, that we're interested in them digesting the information. We're not just putting it out, but we want them to understand what we put out. And the reason why I said nothing to do with this has been going on well before I got here. And we've had this great team in place, and it's been such an amazing thing to come in and see them work the way they do. So thank you for letting me indulge, Mayor, and recognizing our finance team, as well as Barbara's from our team. She is our CAO, working with Leanne over finance, and then again, all of these individuals with our team.
The city manager and I are going to photobomb the picture. Thanks again. We're really proud of each and every one of you, especially that Santa Fe and Albuquerque didn't win.
Yeah.
So they're for Keller and Weber. I'll be sure to send them a text.
Mandy, please put that out there.
Yes. Mandy, I made the recommendation at our meeting that this really has to be the good news for Las Cruces, really expanded, whatever.
And that it's not Albuquerque.
And that it's not Albuquerque or Santa Fe. So there.
Okay, so if there's no other further questions or comments, then Christine, this is for the vote. Believe it or not, we still got to vote on this.
This is on the motion to approve Resolution 23-093. Councilor Abeyta?
Yes.
Councilor Graham?
Yes.
Councilor Bencomo?
Yes.
Councilor Cran?
Yes.
Councilor Flores?
Yes.
Councilor Gondeta?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, next is item 8.4, which is Resolution 23-095. Need a
Move
motion?
to approve. Graham?
Second?
Motion made by Councilor Graham, second by Councilor Bencomo. And David Ware, Deputy Director of Community Development, will be presenting.
Good afternoon, Mayor. David Weir, Community Development.
Mayor, I should probably do an oath for him since it is an appeal.
You want to put him on an oath? Okay.
Yeah. Though. Okay. David, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor and City Council, the item on your agenda is an appeal to a special use permit for a cannabis dispensary. Just as you recall, in the past year or so, the city adopted the allowance for cannabis uses within the city. Dispensaries are permitted by right as a conditional use in the C1, C2, and C3 districts. The conditions they meet are in relationship to buffering, that they should be located 300 feet from a school or daycare, from another cannabis use, or a single-family residential zoning district. And so if those conditions aren't met, then it goes to a next level of review. It goes to a special use permit in our zoning code, and that's something that's reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission to see how that fits into the neighborhood and surrounding area. And if with their approval, the use can go in. If they find something that's harmful to the health benefit, general welfare of the community, they can deny that. Whether a special use permit is approved or denied, it can be appealed to City Council, and that's what you see today. Just to give you some background, the property is Zone C2, so cannabis use is allowed in that district, again, with those conditions. The property itself has historically been used as a gas station or a car dealer. It is located at the south end of the downtown, and it's adjacent to a multiple of zoning districts. The zoning map shows you a little bit better. The property itself is right at the point of Main Street and Alameda Boulevard. As you can see, there's a list of C2 properties along both of those streets, C3 at the Loretta Town Center, and then as you move westward, you get into that residential area. Again, this is an aerial, just shows you the existing buildings in the site. The red outline is, again, the subject property, and then you can see the uses surrounding it. Just some background, the property has always been constructed and utilized per City of Las Cruces development and business regulations, and it currently is operating that way today. The special use dealt with, again, a cannabis use or cannabis dispensary. Again, the other buffer requirements were met with the exception of the distance from the single-family zoning district. It was, as the bird flies, 82 feet short, and so it's approximately 218 feet from that. This slide shows you the footprint of the existing building and what they're going to do to make improvements to the property. The graphic on the right is the interior remodel that will take place within the building. Again, just to give you an idea of what the context and what the area looks like, it is currently a car dealership, as you can see in that area. You can see some commercial businesses and offices here to the left. Behind it is commercial and office uses, the bank tower, La Clinica, restaurant, and some other business uses. Again, this is trying to kind of look northwesterly. Again, you can see Main Street and the size of that street. This is a picture that's taken from Alameda. I might also note in the background that both Main Street and Alameda are arterial roadways, so that's one of our largest street categories in the city. And again, I believe this is looking kind of northwesterly up Alameda Boulevard. When the SUP was initially reviewed by staff, staff made an analysis, just like we do with all zoning cases. It goes out to all city departments. We also, before it goes to the Planning and Zoning Commission for their review, we do notice to adjacent property owners. During this time in review, we did receive a couple of phone calls. One was just general inquiry into information about what the proposed use was. We also did receive a person that kind of protested the use, and at that time, they basically cited the potential to increase crime in the area. Before the meeting or at the meeting, there was a protest letter submitted. That was more of a procedural item as to how the city was choosing to review this particular use. As we went forward, basically some of the other protests that we heard at the Planning and Zoning Commission, one is how the special use permit was being reviewed and how the city was choosing to review and act on the proposed use. Other things they talked about was the potential for increased crime. There was also a compatibility of the use with some of the existing uses in the area. And then there was also a concern about this is a gateway into your downtown and how will that impact redevelopment of that area. The staff themselves made a recommendation of approval. They felt that the use met the intent of the zoning code and also the city's comprehensive plan. The Planning and Zoning Commission also made they actually approved the special use permit with a unanimous vote with one member absent. They made findings at their meeting. One, they found that with the exception of the distance, it met all other buffering requirements. Excuse me, that the property has always been in use in compliance to city standards, and that the mixed-use nature of the property was in compliance with the general development and use in that area. They also noted that the non-residential properties along Alameda Boulevard provided an actual buffer or transition to the single-family area. Also, the size of the street provided an additional transition from the proposed use. They also noted that because of the size of the streets and the use of the property, that there was no additional traffic impacts anticipated by the redevelopment of the property. And then also stated that when you look at the permitted uses or the impacts of a use in the city's zoning code, it met those intent, and the actual use and operation of the business would have to follow all city business and zoning requirements, and also the state of New Mexico's requirement for the operation of a cannabis establishment. Excuse me. Again, during that review, and made a part of the Planning and Zoning Commission staff report, and also their finding was that there were several elements and policies of Elevate Las Cruces that supported the use, and they really come down to two things. One, that the downtown is a mixed-use place type, and this proposal would feed into that and promote that use. That economic growth in a mixed-use setting is desired by the city, and again, it contributes to that. Then also, it diversifies and promotes emerging industries for the city. So there are basically 4 goals that have policies that support the potential use in SUP at this location. As stated after the meeting, there was an appeal letter submitted. Again, it was similar to the items that were brought up at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. One was the city's treatment of this as a special use permit, and then also the statements of the impacts of its compatibility at the location, and then its impacts as to the entryway into the downtown. That is the background information and the presentation we have. As staff, you have your traditional ordinance options. If you vote yes, that will overturn the approval of the cannabis use, and basically the special use permit would be denied, and it would end there unless they chose to appeal to district court. If you vote no, the special use permit stays in effect, and then they can come in with their building permits and business registration to begin operating at the site. If there's anything that you would like us to do, we can amend, or if there's additional information you'd like, you can table the request. Both the special use permit applicant is here, and then also representatives of the appeal individuals are here also. So I'd be happy to stand for any questions or to provide additional information on, or provide explanation to the information I made in the presentation.
Dave, what I'd like to do, if it's okay, is to let the applicant of the special use permit speak, and then the applicant for who asked for the appeal, and then if we could ask questions after we hear both. Is that okay? Okay, so I usually allot 15 minutes. So to the applicants who are asking for the special use permit, if you just come here, the city clerk's going to take your testimony under oath, and then just state your name, please. And
my name is Sean Maddox.
Hi, Sean. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
Thank you.
I have a quick question for the city attorney before my time starts. Am I not? Is that better?
Can you talk into the mic a little bit?
Sorry.
It's
yes.
Okay.
Quick question for the city attorney before my time starts.
Go ahead. Absolutely.
Okay. So I just want to clarify the scope of the appeal because I know comments were made earlier by the public, and I'm sure comments are going to happen after my presentation, but to my understanding, under the city's code, the appeal is limited to the matters that were brought up by the appeal letter. Is that correct by the city attorney?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. Okay, I guess my time starts now then? Okay, so the appeal letter essentially lays out a problem with the procedural issue of the SUP process in general. Not just the SUP process as it relates to cannabis, but the SUP process in general. This is a little concerning because essentially you guys are being asked to answer a constitutional decision today about the city's entire SUP process. They're saying that it is a constitutionally vague process and that essentially this should be overturned because of that constitutional vagueness. It has nothing to do with actually the merits of the SUP that was awarded or any of the facts. The appeal is mostly limited to a procedural case or matter. So speaking to that case or matter, I'm going to just go through the issues. First off, the issues do not call into question the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision or factors considered, as just stated. The issues stated by the appellant question the city's ordinance and overall SUP process, not just SUP processes for cannabis. The appellant's argument actually wrongly conflates the idea of a variance with the process of an SUP permit. Special use permit is specifically allowed for within the ordinance that outlines the zoning for this. Essentially, it says if we were within 300 feet of a daycare or a school, we would have to get a variance, not a special use permit. We're within 300 foot of residential, which requires a special use permit. That is outlined in the code. It is specifically allocated for, so it is not a variance, as the appellant suggests and conflates in their argument. A variance is defined as a variation in the requirements of the Land Development Code. Again, this is not a variance. It was a permit process. The SUP is actually contemplated by the zoning code. Further, the appellant's letter wrongly imputes a standard for review that is instead intended to regulate appeals to zoning authority. The code section cited is NMSA section 3-21-8, C1, A through D. Title of this section is Appeals to Zoning Authority. This was not an appeal, it was a special use permit, so the standard that's actually being argued for in the appeal letter shouldn't have gone against the Planning and Zoning Commission's determination. That being said, that section of the code in an appeal setting, which is where we are today, allows when an appeal alleges that there is an error in any decision or determination by an administrative official, the zoning authority, by majority of vote of all of its members, may authorize variances from the terms of the zoning resolution, so a variance from the Planning and Zoning's resolution. They can do so if they find that that variance is not contrary to public interest, where owing to special conditions, a literal enforcement of the zoning ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship, so that the spirit of the zoning ordinance is observed and substantial justice done, and so that the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan are implemented. The special use permit process and determination is not an appeal. Thus, the standard is more properly imputed onto today's current proceeding than it would be on the determination of the P&Z Commission's determination. Given the correctly stated standard for appeal review, the appellant's burden is to argue in the affirmative that the council's approval of the resolution is not contrary to public interest, is necessary that the ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship, is allowing the spirit of the zoning ordinance to be observed, and is necessary for the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. The presentation given earlier laid out a couple of the consistencies with the comprehensive plan that the proposed use does meet. Next, in regard to the SUP process in general, the appellant calls into question the SUP process by attacking the city's SUP requirements outlined in section 38-54. They state no standard other than to determine the impacts of the surrounding issue or use. That itself is a standard, and the staff report went into deep detail on how these standards were actually addressed. Aside from that, this standard is promulgated by the Development Code for all SUPs and applies to over 25 different enumerated special uses in the city. These include boarding houses, golf courses, group child care homes, campgrounds, halfway houses, and more. Essentially, a finding in support of the appeal suggests that the city's SUP process is unconstitutional and calls into question any SUP permit that any other 25 enumerated issues have been granted under. Getting back to the 7-page staff report from the July 26 hearing, I think it was summarized pretty well earlier in the presentation, but essentially findings were found that the proposed use met other cannabis distance requirements, but for the residential, there is a substantial commercial buffer between the residential and the proposed use so as to not affect the residential use, that the proposed use was consistent with the land use history. They talked about impact considerations, which I think are extremely important, and they are in the line of business of the applicant in general. And these are traffic, development compatibility, mitigation technique implementation, increase of danger or fire or endanger public safety, determinant of orderly phased growth, impairment of public health, safety, or general welfare, establishment of a spot zone, contradiction of purpose and intent of the zoning code, and impairment of light and air to the adjacent property. Again, compatibility of the neighborhood and character were discussed. Public comment was heard about a nearby use that they felt was sensitive to. That public comment was heard, listened to, and still it was voted in favor of the SUP being approved. Comprehensive discussions went into compliance with the Elevate Las Cruces comprehensive plan, which was important for the proposed uses being approved. And again, consistency with the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. Overall, the appellant claims the city's SUP standard is constitutionally questionable, as it invites the Planning and Zoning Commission to engage in arbitrary and discriminatory enforcement of the distance requirements. But the appellant's letter, I haven't heard their argument, fails to make a substantive argument about the constitutionality and does not meet the burden to prove unconstitutionality beyond all reasonable doubt. And that's a standard that's actually outlined in case law, contained within the case law cited by the appellant. But there's a case, State X Rel Children, Youth, and Families Department v. Shaughnessy. And in that, the case law states, a strong presumption of constitutionality underlies each statute, and that a defendant has the burden to prove unconstitutionality beyond all reasonable doubt. The appellant's letter actually states that correctly, the state code grants limitations on municipalities in deciding zoning. I think that's a nice use of term because it really enumerates broad power of municipalities in deciding what to do with their zoning. As long as it doesn't directly conflict with a state law or a code, it's pretty much allowed. The case cited in the appellant's brief actually does not even address the constitutionality of the ordinance in question because it essentially says cities have the right to decide these things. Aside from the legal arguments, I guess I just kind of want to give a procedural history on this too. We started this process back in April of last year. We submitted we had our pre-application hearing or meeting, I think in May, and then in April. Then we submitted in May, we were heard in July. To my understanding, the period for appeal was actually supposed to end August 12th. The presentation given today suggests that the appeal was received on the 16th, which actually falls outside of the appeals period, so I'm not even sure why we're here in the first place. Beyond that, it's been about 180 days. The city's had our number. They've allowed us to submit to building, planning, and our plans are under review right now by the city with, I think, our second or third set of comments being received. And we have received no communication about an appeal. Really, we found out about this about 10 to 15 days ago by a broker. The city, as part of our SUP process, has phone numbers, emails, and correspondence. An email was sent to city staff on August 12th asking about the status of an appeal, which said no appeal has been received. We never received an email after that. We've been in planning and zoning for 120 days without anything. Aside from that, we've already been issued a state license, which doesn't mean much because that can happen without your guys' approval. Of course, it would be our responsibility to act in compliance with state regs. But yeah, 195 days have passed since the P&Z Commission approval, 178 days since the appeal was received. Again, no communication from city staff directly to the owners or the applicant. Beyond that, just to kind of bring up this matter and its history in front of you guys heard ordinance number 3012 back in October. I'm sure you guys remember the ordinance was should we remove this 300-foot buffer? Essentially, at the time, you guys looked at it, and 28 cannabis businesses have been approved, 6 of them under the SUP process. All 6 of those had gotten nearly unanimous approval by P&Z, and so the question was, should we remove this in its entirety? City staff decided not to, which I think is the correct process. I do think that looking at the impact of these on the neighborhood is something that should be left to planning and zoning in the city to decide. But again, it just notes at how close we were to today's appeal being moot. 1 vote amongst your staff members. Now we're being asked to decide a constitutional matter with very little argument as to why this constitutional matter is relevant. It was really a cut and paste of the objection letter that was considered by the P&Z Commission in making their determination. And at the end of the day, I think it's almost an impossible burden for the appellant to show that, or to prove that the city's SUP process that has been in place for a very long time is an unconstitutional process. I think that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. I've limited my discussion to legality because that seems to be the scope of the appeal. I'd be very happy to discuss the proposed business, the business owners, their history in the industry, nuisance mitigation techniques, and anything that they've done. You know, these guys are multi-state operators, very experienced, husband and wife team, very community-oriented. You know, we're not a public company or a family-run business that's tried to come to the city, has invested substantially in the process already, and is now being told, you know, very late in time that everything they've done so far might just be tossed out into the garbage. So, you know, my request today is that the council members vote down the proposed resolution as the appellant fails to meet their burden or state legitimate grounds for appeal, and the Planning and Zoning Commission's determination properly supported approval of the SUP through proper consideration of the proposed business's impact on the surrounding area. Excuse me, I need some water. Any questions?
Yeah. Sean, if I may, I'm going to ask a question of you and then of the community development, then I'll open up to my colleagues. So just, can you clarify your position? Are you their legal counsel?
General counsel, chief compliance officer, and a minority partner in the business.
So you feel that the SUP is not the right method, that it's more of a variance. Is that what I'm understanding?
No, I feel the SUP is the proper method. It is not a variance. The appellant suggests and conflates an SUP with a variance. I feel the SUP is a proper method. I think the way the Planning and Zoning Commission heard this, opened it up to public comment, and considered its impact on the surrounding area is the right method.
Okay. And let me ask the community development. So Dave or Larry, do you all have the administrative wherewithal or power to grant this change? It's 218 feet as opposed to 300 feet as far as a buffer, or do you have to take this to the planning and zoning?
Mayor and City Council, the way the ordinance is written is that these cannabis uses are permitted uses with conditions, and the buffer's the condition. However, if they fall within that district, that distance, it goes to Planning and Zoning Commission as a special use permit for review. So the ordinance has a tiered system, and they're not the only special use permit that's treated that way. Our cell towers have that requirement if you're within a certain distance of a residential area, that staff can't approve that administratively. It has to go through a special use permit process. Also, the size of a business in our C1 commercial district, if it's larger than 2,000 square feet, again, it's something that staff can't approve administratively. It has to go through the special use permit process. And also our daycares. When you have 1 to 6 children, that's something that can be done as a home occupation or by right in a district. Once you go to 7 to 12, then you have to go through the special use permit process. So this is a practice that has been followed by the city throughout my tenure of going forward. The slide I put up has the relevant sections. It talks about cannabis uses and the districts it's allowed as a conditional use. It then goes through the special use permit section where it shows what the definition is, and then that's where it says that if you don't meet those 300-foot buffers, then you kick to the special use permit process.
So let me ask Jocelyn. Jocelyn, you've heard what Community Development said and what Mr. Maddox has said. Do you feel that the process that we're using is the correct process, or should we table this and get the correct process in place?
Actually, Mayor, just on this subject, I have issued a few different confidential memos, and I would just ask that everyone refer to those memos and that we speak privately about that. I do think that if you need to table it so that we can speak about it, then I would advise that.
Okay, let me open this up to my colleagues and see what they want to do. Let's start with Councilor Graham, Bencomo, Flores.
Well, right now, we're just talking about what we want to do, because I thought we were waiting.
Oh, you can ask questions of this.
Well, I thought we were waiting for the other parties to speak, or we're just going.
Well, if you had any questions of what you've heard so far.
No, I'm just saying I do not want to table this.
Okay, then let's go to the, then let's go, you don't have any, if you don't have any questions of what was.
I don't have questions, I have things to say.
Okay, sure.
Should I do it now? Should I
Well,
pop
we
off
can,
now?
we can get the applicant, the people, the applicants who placed the appeal and hear what they have to say. Is that what you want to do?
Okay, yep, sure. And then I'm first.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, who's here represent, if you can just kind of stand by, there you go. Who are here to discuss the appeal? Is there like a group, team? I see former mayor and.
There's a very fundamental issue regarding the timing.
I'm going to go forward with the applicants who asked for the appeal. And so these two in front of us, former Mayor Smith, and who is the one who asked for the...
Who filed the
Yeah, who
appeal?
filed the appeal? Who are the representatives?
Who filed it?
Mayor and City Council, the appeal was filed by Karen Wooten, who's a local attorney, and in her appeal letter, she said that she was representing AKA Tutti Bambini and Reuben Smith.
Okay, well, I see Reuben Smith. So do you want to come, you have a team, or it's just you, or, okay? Is someone from Tutti Bambini here as well, or you're? So we too will give you up to 15 minutes to speak. And then after that, I don't know, sir, I'll open it up to members of the public, okay? If you're not with this group.
Is he talking to me? Hi, my name is Sister Beth. Good afternoon.
Mayor,
I'm here
Mayor,
on
I need to
behalf-
do the oath
I'm
first
sorry,
really
we have
quick.
to take your oath. We have
No
to
problem.
Take the oath of what's your testimony.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
Yes. What happened? What?
Whatever you're going to say is true. Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes, okay. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, my hearing aids are not set up for this. I'm here on behalf of Tutti Bambini, and our main concern for this proposal is the safety involved in what we do that would be right across the street. Most of our customers, our volunteers, are elderly. We have a lot of grandparents. We have older volunteers. We're also concerned about the safety of our children. We do not want something to happen that would perpetuate the idea that we are not a safe place for people to come to shop or to take care of their needs. We are a retail store. We also have a mission to help the children in our community who are from low-income families. If it's okay, I would like to read a letter from Billy Taylor, who is the president of our board of directors. For 8 years, Judy Bambini has been located at the corner of Alameda and El Molino, across Alameda from the proposed cannabis retail location. Our mission is to help children challenged by poverty and have special needs. We operate a children's store at this location, and we set all of our prices to address the needs of all low income can afford. We also work with local agencies who give vouchers to their clients, and they can come to our store and they can be redeemed for clothing for children in need. In the future, we have dedicated a space for children to come to our store for story time. We are concerned about the safe environment that we can provide at this time. There are 3 dispensaries in our part of town. Tutti Bambini would be across the street from this dispensary, this proposed dispensary. We also have another dispensary called Sacred Garden, which is across the side street of Molino. So we would have 2 dispensaries right in our location. We who work and live there are the voices that should have the most impact on your decision to deny this permit. Respectfully, Billy Taylor, President of the Board of Tutti Bambini.
Okay, thank you, Sister Beth. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
Thank you. Pardon?
Was there anything else you wanted to say?
No, just that I think our first concern has to be for our customers, and we've had a few incidents that have occurred with people who have been smoking cannabis in our parking lot, have proceeded to come into our store. It's very frightening for our clientele when this happens, and we usually have an incident that goes along with that. So that's our main concern. We also know that there are people who sit in their cars in our parking lot that are smoking marijuana. So to have another one is of a concern to us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now you're going to have to take the oath as well.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, City Councilors, I own, to begin with, I'm here for 2 reasons. I own a residential building, a house, that I purchased that's within the 300 feet limit. And I bought that specifically for Sister Beth. She wanted a place to live that was very near across the street to Tutti Bambini and Jardín. Legally, that's why I'm here. But I must tell you something in particular for some of the new city councilors that may not know something about this lady, and she's going to kick me one once I do that. I'm going to wait till the mayor finishes because I think Representative Ben Como needs to hear it too. Sister Beth came to me when I was first elected with her partner, Sister Anna. We were right at the beginning of building the community of hope that I assume you all know about. She wanted to build a component for the young kids, and they called it Jardín de los Niños. History after that, she said that wasn't sufficient. So what she did, she created the La Tienda, which is right across the street from Tutti Bambini. Are you familiar with that? That's where they sell gently used clothes for women. That wasn't good enough, so what she did, she went across the street and opened Tutti Bambini. Tutti Bambini raises money for infants, for babies that are essentially homeless. She's been doing that ever since I've known her, for some 15 or 20 years. She never wants to get recognition for that, but this is the kind of person we have in our community, that all she is asking for is, let us continue to thrive. I know there was one city councilor referring to the cannabis industry. They don't want to see it just survive, they want to see it thrive. I would hope in the pit of my heart that you, as mayor and city council, would want to look out as what is going to be the implications of not only this location, but all cannabis locations. They said there's 3. There's actually going to be 5 within a 2-block area of Tutti Bambini. 5. This reminds me, years ago, once again, first elected, I got a call on a Sunday. Mayor, there's some kind of construction going on. I think it was on the corner of Mesquite and Amador. Huge cranes and whatnot. Long story short, they were putting a cell tower in right in the historical district, Mesquite Historical District. Long story short, called the city manager, they figured out a way to call a halt. What that did to the city, it gave us an opportunity to figure out long range, how are we going to address the locations of cell towers within our city? And if you notice, we did ensure that it would not be built within downtown areas, it would have to be built on the outside areas. This is the same challenge I believe you all have as you sit here. I believe we're the only community that doesn't have hours of when they can close, which is not a big deal. Most of them close early anyway. But the proliferation of locations all over the city, and now we've got 3 huge lounge areas that are going to be opening up. I mean, you as elected officials, I would think, what is the perception of people outside the city? For years and years, we worked on this city to work on the perception. What is it that people love about the city? A lot of retirees. I can guarantee you most of those retirees are going to be looking at this city from a standpoint of, I'm one right now, but I'm retiring. From the standpoint of, what is it going to look like when you're driving around and you've got these cannabis locations all over the place? I'm not against cannabis. I'm not going to debate that issue about alcohol and cannabis. That's for another time. But I can tell you, I think you, as an elected body of this city, needs to look at that very, very hard and the implications. Biggest implication is on Tutti and La Tienda. They do more for this community, for the homeless, than I think almost anyone else does. So I think, personal opinion, more research needs to be done on this kind of an issue. I don't think it's going to put them out of business at all if this is tabled so you can look at it. One other issue. I don't know if any of you have spoken to any school board members or the superintendent. Do you know that they're talking about putting another facility in that location where they're at now, across the street? That's important. That's a discussion I think you as elected officials need to be doing with your counterparts, mayor to superintendent, you as elected officials with the elected school board members. They would have a concern if they get to that point and have a cannabis shop right across the street. I would encourage you to think about the future perception of this city as to what we're doing and how we're dealing about it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, is there anybody else on your team, I guess? Okay.
No team.
Okay. So I'm going to ask if council can open up the council so they can ask questions of either yourselves or the city staff or Mr. Maddox. So I'm going to start with Councilor, I'll just start from the top. Councilor Abate, Graham, Bencomo, Flores.
I'm happy to defer to Councillor Graham first, and then I'll go after her. Thank you.
Hi, so thank you, everyone. I don't have questions. I'm just going to pop off a little bit, and then I'll be ready. Thank you, everyone who presented, who shared their perspectives. Thank you, Sister Beth, for everything that you do for our community. All that said, I've asserted in the past my changing perception about cannabis as I've kind of grown into being an elected official. I see cannabis as a medicinal substance that is a positive impact on our community, that is a positive impact on our economic development prospects. So I always throw that out there at the top. I won't speak on the constitutionality of the SUP. I will speak, though, on David's presentation, what the remaining variance issue was, which was the residential zone. And to bring up, yet again, if we were talking about a multifamily housing complex, if we were talking an apartment, this wouldn't even be an issue. This to me is the kind of classist nonsense that planning and zoning perpetuates through our communities. So I'm expected to believe that it's too dangerous to have a cannabis dispensary near a single-family home, but that's not an issue for folks who live in multifamily housing. I think that is discriminatory. I think that is hypocritical. And I was one of the non-winning voters to get rid of the buffer in the past. I would hope whatever it takes to get that back on an agenda again. I don't know what the procedure is for that, if we can revisit that. And perhaps some of my colleagues would have rethought their stances on the buffer zone. So again, please know that I do consider others' feelings on this. I consider the implications. I do more reading and put more time into this than you need to know. But yeah, just reiterating my stance. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Abeyta, then Bencomo and Flores.
Thank you. One question that I want to ask right away is regards to that of the appeal, if it was submitted in time. That is highly concerning if the applicant, if they had been checking, if there had been any appeals and there hadn't been, and then a few days later, that seems, like I said, quite concerning.
Mayor and Councilor Abeyta, in the packet you see the appeal letter and it's dated the 8th. We didn't actually receive that to the 12th. And then at that time we were also working on the amendment to remove the buffer from the residential areas. So only thing I can contribute it to is we determined that it did meet the time frame, but we asked if they would allow, the appellants, if they would allow the discussion of amending the ordinance to take place before we actually put it on one of your agendas. So staff feels that we met the deadlines of that. If we dropped the ball a little bit on the conversation with all the parties, I'll apologize for that.
Okay, thank you. And while I appreciate all of the individuals who spoke today and giving personal stories and supplemental information, that burden of proof for the appeal was not within the scope of what was said by Mr. Rubin, and so at this point I am not inclined to overturn.
Okay, Councillor Bencomo.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks so much, David, and both parties that presented. Thank you. Just a couple of procedural questions. The gentleman said that the representative for the business said that they were not notified of that appeal letter had been submitted. David, can you talk about who is supposed to notify the business of that, and where did we fall short on that?
Mayor and Councilor Bencomo, it would be the Community Development Department. We would relay that to both the applicant and the appellants. And in this case, we also had conversation with the property owner and the realtor that represented the property. We made every effort to contact all of those individuals, and like I said, if there was something that didn't take place, that was an oversight.
Okay, thank you. No,
But we have been in conversation with all those parties.
No, yes, thank you. I appreciate you raising that. I mean, I know community development is working incredibly hard, and economic development, to support this new industry, and so I always appreciate that, David. As Sister Beth mentioned, there is, and I had noted it as well, probably for a little bit different reasons, but I did know that Sacred Gardens is a couple blocks down from this, and I know that before they were they had recreational sales, they were medical cannabis, so they have been there for several years, correct?
Mayor and Councilor Bencomo, you are correct. Prior to the recreational cannabis, medicinal uses were considered similar to a pharmacy and were permitted by right without any additional review.
Right. So Sacred Gardens now has recreational use. Did they have to go through a special use permit?
Mayor and Councilor Bencomo, they did not, because of the state statute. If you had an existing medicinal use, you were grandfathered in and were allowed to have recreational sales without meeting local zoning requirements.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, David. I was getting ready to sort of say that there was huge inconsistencies if that was the case, which is why I have for a long time disagreed with the arbitrary 300 foot buffer anyway. These are sort of my last, actually no, I'm sorry, I have one more question regarding this property. How long has this been empty? Abandoned?
Mayor, I don't believe that it's actually been empty. There's still cars for sale on the lot.
Okay.
So it would be a change in use, and then there would be improvements for the new use taking place. But there's not any nonconformities on it, and it is actually being used today.
Okay, I could have sworn that car dealership was gone already, but thank you for clarifying that. I will say that the Denny's now behind this is empty. I think a few blocks north, there's a couple empty properties, and so, and then obviously on El Paseo, we know how much blight there is there, and you know, for me, it's always really important, right? People want us to increase development in these areas, and then where we have development, we're like, wait a minute. So I think, again, that just offers some inconsistency. I'll say a couple of things. You know, I was recently talking to the High Horse Cannabis that has the 24-hour shop on Valley, and they were telling me that they're right next to a little mall where there's like a butcher shop and a t-shirt place, and they actually have gotten incredible feedback about how their 24-hour service has impacted the safety in a positive way of that neighborhood and that area. And so I think it's incredible. I think we also have to note that when we talk about issues of crime rising, I don't think that's factual. I don't think that's factual information, especially when we're sitting here talking about being under oath. I think it's critical that we bring data and evidence when we make such heavy accusations of any particular business. And so I think that's important to raise. I also say that Sister Beth, in case you can't hear me, Sister Beth, I'll call you after this because I adore and respect you, and so I have to apologize in advance for disagreeing with you today, because I deeply love and respect what you do for the community, and thank you, Sister Beth. I think you're an incredible human being, and I've known you for a long time, and what you do for our community is actually tremendous, and I truly hope that perhaps You can build a partnership with this new business around how to keep your community safer. I would suggest that you reach out to Officer Glymph, who may come do an assessment for you if you are experiencing some security concerns. I know Tutti Bambini will be fine for two reasons. One, you provide an incredible service to our community, and two, you are deeply beloved. I don't think you're going anywhere, and so I just wanted to note that as well, Sister Beth. But I will also be voting no today because just simply on the basis that I think this 300 buffer is arbitrary, and I would argue with Councillor Graham. I would agree with Councillor Graham that I hope we get that back, because I think it is irresponsible, and I think it's some huge inconsistencies as to how we are discriminating against certain retailers. So I'll stop there, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Flotis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Weir, to me, the Community Development Department is not the defendant in this case. Mr. Maddox made it very clear that they didn't receive the notice until the notice of appeal, or whatever it's called in your world, until August 16th, which is 4 days beyond the appeal date. So on that matter, I would say that, and based on everything else that he presented, that it is moot, that we shouldn't be here, that if he as legal counsel and part owner of that entity didn't receive it until August 16, notice was not met, and therefore the August 12 deadline would control. So why are we here, Mr. Weir?
Mayor and Councilor Flores, I can only treat it from a standpoint of what the zoning ordinance says. It states that to appeal a decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission within the time frame, you submit that to the city of Las Cruces with your letter of intent to appeal, and then there is a fee involved with it, and then the city will process that to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I'm only following what our standards are, what the zoning code outlines, and so that's why we process that to you today.
Well, I think that's fundamentally unfair, and laws are made, or ordinances or rules or whatever, are made to be fair, not to accommodate a municipality. I think that's just fundamentally wrong. But based on the fact that the appellant didn't make any clear, convincing argument as to what the damage would be. I'm very familiar with Tutti Bambini, and I'm very grateful for the work they do. I donate beautiful clothing there. It's a store. It's a nice store. I don't, and then the graphics that you showed as to the location, that's a very busy intersection. If someone is very happy on cannabis, I doubt very much that they're going to try to cross the street to somehow go into Tutti Bambini. I mean, the whole thing is just so, but just on the fairness issue, whether the process that you just iterated is what you go by, it's still unfair to the respondent. So, and based on substantive issues as well, I would vote to deny the appeal. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Weir.
I got one question to ask Dave, and then I'll open up to the members of the public. So, Dave, the cannabis, it's an ordinance that states that if it's within 300 feet of a residential area, it would require a variance, or in this case, a special use permit.
Mayor, that's correct. The cannabis use was, recreational cannabis use was written into our zoning ordinance and adopted by council. And it states if you can meet those buffers, staff can approve a permit or a use or business registration. If one of those distances aren't met, then it goes through the special use permit, and it can be approved or denied by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay, so it still currently exists. It hasn't been removed, so it's
Correct.
still a law, basically.
You're correct.
Yeah, okay. I want to hear from members of the public who raised their hand that wish to speak. So I just have two? Just two people? Okay, so this gentleman here first, and then ma'am, if you want to come forward. We'll give you 3 minutes each. Is there someone else? Yes, oh, yes, Gary. And so 3 minutes each is fine. So this gentleman, this madam, and then yourself, Gary.
My name is Israel Palma. I live.
I'm sorry, sir, one more time.
Israel Palma. I live at 370 La Colonia, which is, my house shares the parking lot with the doctor there in the corner and Tutti Bambini, and we happen to be very good neighbors. We live across the street from each other. We all do good things for the community and the people that cannot afford to help themselves. But I do have a concern as a homeowner. I don't have the legal expertise or the slide presentations, but this slide that's up there needs to be redefined. And I have so many bullet points that I'd rather just read them really quickly, and hopefully I'm not too illogical or too discombobulated with my presentation. But in the first place, the car lot has about 3 or 4 cars left in it. Practically it's sold. It wouldn't be closing down if it was a successful business. I've lived there since 2014 when I moved down here from Carlsbad. I was a school counselor. I think I fought all this for 30 years, the influx of cannabis in the community, and I have a very negative opinion of it. I think it does lead to somewhere else, and I do disagree with the decision to allow it to come into our community. It seems like everything that's happening, and I will enumerate some of it, is leading to a definition of my neighborhood right next to Tutti Bambini and the doctor there. It seems to be that the decision is going to make this even further into a ghetto. And I say that because I've, since 2014, excuse me, I've noticed that the gentrification that usually goes on from the historic district, and it was moving south at one time, has stopped. And the La Colonia, of all names, Colonia, is not part of that gentrification at this time. Since I moved in, it was a very good neighborhood. And like I said, that car lot has been there, and right now it's closing down for this change. The Denny's next door, like you mentioned, is closed down, it's boarded up. The Wells Fargo branch right next door to the Denny's is all boarded up. I think the only thing that's left is an ATM machine there. The truck store behind that branch is now practically moribund. It does not have any activity in front of it. The Wells Fargo Bank, you may not be aware of it, at the corner of Main and Lowman is closing down in March. So there goes another business out of whack. On Paseo going south, there's south of the car lot, there's a blood for sale place where they pay you for donating blood, just across the street. The Sutherlands is across the street from that, and it's pretty much on its last leg. I've been there since I got here in 2014, buying my supplies to fix up my house, and I've invested thousands and thousands, more than
Excuse me, Mr. Palma, you're out of time, but I'll give you another 20 seconds or so.
Oh, brother. Okay, the theater was closed down, the shoe store next to that was closed down, the gas station across the street was closed down, the sushi place closed down, the Mexican restaurant across the street from it was closed down. There are so many things that have been affected negatively by the trend in our community, and I just don't want my house to be devalued by the influx of these businesses in town. I've been broken into 3 times because there's a traffic between what I call the Emerald City. No, it's not Emerald City. It's City of Hope and the discount stores down south of town. And it's just a boondoggle, and the crime is going through the roof. And I still had about another half-hour presentation because there were so many inconsistencies with their presentations and the reality of my house, my value.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ma'am, and then Gary Sandler. Just need you to state your name, Susan.
Oh, I know the routine, sir. Thank you. My name is Joe Ruprecht. I'm a longtime resident. At one point, I had a house near Pioneer Women's Park. Currently, I live in the North Alameda area. We worked with Officer Glimpf recently to reestablish our neighborhood watch. When we did that, Officer Glimpf informed us about things going around in the neighborhoods near us. And part of what was told to us by the officer is how many times both La Tienda de Jardin and Tutti Bambini have been vandalized or broken into and had damage done. I think Sister Beth and Mayor Smith are not focusing on that, but it was told to us by a city officer as far as a problem in that area for businesses, both of which then were up and functioning. La Tienda now, as I understand it, is closed. I don't know if it's temporary or if it's permanent, but that's another empty space. I have two comments to you about this, and it's not about it being a cannabis business per se. I don't see this as that problem necessarily. One of my problems is that this right here is an inherently unfair, unequal proceeding. You've got the legal counsel for the applicant for the SUP speaking very legalese. I've got a PhD. I've done legal stuff with and against motions. He's giving a lot of legal jargon. And on the other side, while Karen Wooten is a recognized attorney in town, I'm familiar with her work, she's not here. She's not here. There was no explanation for that. But Sister Beth and Mr. Smith are left to fend for themselves, trying to deal with a very well thought out, very legal, and very carefully phrased argument. That's not fair. It seems to me that that in itself would invite you to table this so that perhaps if Attorney Wooten was simply unavailable at this particular time, perhaps she could actually come and represent the appellants in this case. The other thing I have is a question for you about codes and about ordinances, because all too often in the last 10 years, 12 years in particular, I've had to familiarize myself with one ordinance or another that's affecting my life or something that somebody I care about is trying to do. You've got an ordinance that specifies, for some reason, in print and adopted 300 feet as a buffer. What I'm hearing from a couple of the counselors is, we don't like having 300 feet, it's arbitrary. Well, anytime you name a number like that, it's arbitrary. I could say, I don't have to have a setback of this far from the sidewalk, it's arbitrary. In this case, you're being asked to say yes to something where the violation of that 300 feet is more than 25%.
Ms. Rupert, I'll give you another 30 seconds.
Okay, so just on the numbers, they're telling you 300 feet and then so many feet by the crow, as the crow flies. But you're looking at a difference of 25%. What other ordinances are you going to look at and say, it's okay to have 25% less than what we said in the ordinance? It ignores all the work of the councils before you, and it ignores the practicality that there's a reason for that number to be there. It's not just picked out of thin air. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We've got one more counselor, this gentleman, then you can ask questions, please.
Oh, Mr. Sandler.
Gentlemen.
What?
Thank you, Ken.
Gentlemen, you didn't like that word?
I love it. Good afternoon, Council. Good afternoon, Mayor. My name is Gary Sandler. I'm kind of involved in this. I represented the seller of the property, and I also represented the buyer of the property. I also office downtown, and I drive by there 100 times a day, a couple times during the evenings, because usually I'm home by then. But that's a dark corner. And when all those businesses are closed, there's nothing going on there. When this business comes in, it's going to be well lit. It's going to have a lot of traffic and people coming and going, watching out for what's going on there, watching out for themselves. So I think that's going to be a real improvement to the corner. But the real reason I wanted to speak is to bring a little humanity to this. I want to tell you a little bit about the folks who are developing this. Norm and Darlene Yosef. They live in Los Angeles County. They're from San Diego. That's where I lived before I moved here. I grew up with my parents in retail. They grew up with their parents in retail, at least Norman did for sure. And so he's been following in his father's footsteps, in his family's footsteps, and was an entrepreneur ever since he was washing cars when he was 12, whatever he was doing. When cannabis, in 2016, when recreational cannabis was allowed here in New Mexico, in California, sorry, it was in California in 2016, he thought, well, I'd like to be in that business. So he and his wife put all their effort and money into that business, and they grew it to what they have now is 7 locations, and they're trying to open more locations. They look for towns where they can be a part of what's going on there and with the community. They're not some corporation that's just putting unknown people in here. It's a family business. With regard to the car lot itself, that owner has been there 25 years, and he's retiring, and he's just thrilled that he has sold that property. And now he and his wife get to go wherever they're going to go and fight on aircraft and whatever else may happen. The cars are still there because he's winding down the business. He's actually rented back from these owners while they work with the city to put their remodeling and building permits in place. So the message here that I wanted to bring was that this is a family business. It will improve the corner. They have their hearts and their money and their dreams all wrapped up in this type of business that they're trying to build for themselves. And I really believe that you should not approve this ordinance. Well, I lost the word. Anyway, I appreciate you. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
If we do, we'll ask you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone.
So there's no one else that wishes to speak? Okay. So I'm going to say something, and I'll let my colleagues say something. So I'm going to say this directly to Mr. Maddox. So Mr. Maddox, I was reelected, fortunately, in November 2019. And shortly thereafter, I take an oath of office. I take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, the laws of the state of New Mexico, and the ordinances of the city of Las Cruces. And the ordinances are laws. Now, if this had been in a resolution, that's another story. That's a policy. Council can overturn that. But because this is still an ordinance, and I just got to confirm from our community development, based on those findings, based on that fact, I have to vote for this. It's not within the purview. It's 82 feet away from, it's 218 feet to a residential, which is included in the ordinance. So that's why, I'm just one vote, but I'm just sharing with you my reason, and I just want you to be aware of that. So it's my opinion that if I was to vote against this, that I would be breaking the law, basically, because it's an ordinance. So I just wanted to share that. I'm going to open up to council and my colleagues and see if they have any further comments, and then after that, we'll go for the vote. Councilor Flores and Councilor
Thank you,
Beta.
Mr. Mayor. Yes, we were presented with a modification of the special use permit by the Community Development Department, and Catherine Harrison Rogers did the presentation. And I think I was the only one that voted yes on that. And that one would be taking care of this particular issue.
No, there was multiple of us that voted for that.
Who?
There was more than one.
Oh, well, anyway, I would like to have that presentation again, and hopefully, I was really distraught that my colleagues didn't agree, at least the majority. So can we get that back on calendar, Mr. Mayor, so that we can have that presentation again? But again, I'll be voting to deny the appeal. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. And I believe Councilor Abeta, you had your...
No, Mayor, I'll pass. Thank you.
Okay, so if there's nothing further, so just as a clarification, a no vote means to deny, and then they will be allowed to move forward. A yes vote would be to approve the overturning, and then they would not be allowed. Okay? Christine?
This is on the motion to approve Resolution 23-094. Counselor Abeyta?
No, based on staff findings.
Counselor Graham?
No, based on staff findings.
Counselor Bencomo?
No, based on staff findings.
Counselor Cran?
No, same justification.
Counselor Flores?
No, based on the fact that this was an unfair proceeding insofar as our process goes, and I think that we have to modify that because you're not the appellant in this, so you're not the party in interest. So I'm voting no, and with that request on the record that we revisit that. And thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Rivera.
Counselor Gondeta?
No, based on staff findings.
And Mayor?
I vote yes, and based on the fact that this is within the ordinance, and I believe this is the proper venue.
Motion fails.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone, for your presentation, and thank you for your attendance. Okay, next item is 8.5, Council Bill number 23-017, ordinance number 3023.
Move to approve. Graham?
Second, Beta.
Motion made by Councilor Graham, second by Councilor Abeyta, and Erica Hawkes will be presenting.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of Council. Erica Hawkes, Treasurer. The ordinance before you is for approval of changes to the investment policy. City Charter, Section 511, Investment of Public Funds states Council shall adopt by ordinance a policy and procedures regarding the deposit and investment of city monies. The investment policy establishes the authority and procedures of the investment of city funds outlined in the municipal code. A draft of the investment policy was presented to the Finance Select Committee for discussion and review. This policy was last updated in 2005. 7 definitions were added to the policy and other revisions were made for clarity. An investment advisor was added to the policy. The investment advisor will actively assist with the management of the investment portfolio, provide updates on market conditions, and make recommendations on investments. Internal controls was also added to the policy. We currently have internal controls in place, but want to include these controls as part of the policy. All investments are approved by our finance director. These changes are consistent with investment policy of other entities, such as City of Albuquerque, Rio Rancho, and Santa Fe. Updates to the policy are necessary to comply with the New Mexico State Statute, Chapter 6, Article 10, Deposits and Investments of Funds, which outline allowable investments. We also included best practices recommended by the Government Finance Officers Association, GFOA. These consist of investment guidelines and priorities, which contribute to improve government management. They also enhance the quality of decision-making and commitment to fiduciary care of public funds. The city's growth has also contributed to an increase in revenues. Our bank secures up to a limited amount of our funds. Anything in excess of that, we go ahead and invest. The excess funds are invested short-term or long-term based on cash flows. And that's the end of my presentation. Here are your council options, and I stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Members of the public? Okay, seeing none. Christine?
This is on the motion to approve Ordinance 3023. Counselor Abeyta?
Yes.
Counselor Graham?
Yes.
Counselor Bencomo?
Yes.
Counselor Cran?
Yes.
Counselor Flores is absent. Yes. Oh, there she is. Counselor Gondeta?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to go to board appointments. And looks like to the Senior Programs Advisory Board, District 3 appointment, Steve Harry Gaskell. Okay. And next is notice of proposed ordinances. There'll be no public discussion, and Councilor may ask staff for clarification on the proposed ordinances. Number 10.1, Council Bill number 23020, ordinance number 3026.
Bring it forward.
Okay, bring it forward. Now we go to City Council member board reports and comment. I don't have any, so I'll turn to Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks, Mayor. You know, I don't have very much other than to say that we had a very successful, I thought, Las Cruces days. We were able to meet with many of our legislators and the governor, and I thought we had Mr. Peely with us. It was the first time that I think he's met the governor. It was very successful, I thought. Good conversation, and I look forward to basically what comes next if we get our capital outlay and our junior money, and I'm hopeful for that. That's it. That's really all I have.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Actually, I forgot to mention, I will be, I believe, joining or talking at the board of the EBID to get them to hopefully relax some charges that they want to charge the city for us putting up some fencing. So we'll see how that goes Wednesday morning. Okay. Councilor Flotis?
I pass.
In fact, I was going to invite you to go there to, give them a thing or two at the EBID. Councilor Coran?
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Utilities for helping me follow up with a constituent about her bill, and also Adrian really helped me figure out some of the resources, and then I also visited the Utilities desk where Jamar really helped us figure out what all the options are for folks who are facing stress related to utility bills. I would say that it doesn't feel like enough, especially given the gas increase, but I do really want to thank the service that was provided in that context. Like, I think people come to those spaces in distress, and the whole process was really incredibly kind and supportive. So I just want to thank the folks who really work with customers every day and try to support them and help them as best they can. So that's all I have for today.
Okay, Councilor Bencomo?
Wow, I'm just going to take up all the time that you all have.
Oh, no, please. There's a 3-minute limit.
Yes, I also feel like we haven't met in a while, so I have some things to give out as well. I had a great meeting with the Legends West neighborhood a few weeks ago. I just wanted to thank Carriol and Public Works and Parks and the police department for really spearheading that. I was really thankful for that. I'm excited for the next steps, so I just really wanted to thank you all for helping me host that meeting. It was a very exciting time in Santa Fe last week. Thankfully, we went when it wasn't very cold, so that was great. We had a great meeting with the governor, and I think she really understands how much we're prioritizing the airport, our anti-poverty programs, and just glad to have Larry Horan there. We also had a great follow-up meeting with someone who does a lot of housing work there, and so I'm looking forward to following up with Natalie Green, our housing manager, on tapping into some funds that the governor has set aside for affordable housing. So I'm really excited about that opportunity. I also got an opportunity to speak to some legislators about the MRA legislation, and people are excited about it. Maybe I'm projecting because I'm excited about it, but I'm going to keep pushing it because it's going to be so meaningful. I also got to talk to Representative Cristina Ortez from Taos, who's going to be leading on it on the House side. So I'm very excited about that. I also went to the new Attorney General is really ramping up his office here in Las Cruces. Up until last week, I didn't even know the Attorney General had an office in Las Cruces, and so he really wants to do a lot of work on housing protections, on consumer protections, and civil rights. And so I'm looking forward for us to continue building a relationship with him and his office. And then lastly, I just wanted to note, because I wanted to make sure that IFO was up on his radar again, but IFO, Mayor Pro Tem and I visited Jardín de los Niños a couple weeks ago, and we did a listening session with some of the parents who are in their program. And one of the things that came up during that session, we always get really great feedback. One of the things was just around how some parents feel like the sports that Parks and Rec hold, sometimes their requirements are a bit rigid. A lot of folks perhaps can't even go to the sign-up opportunities that they have at MacArthur, and so they're just asking for some leniency around that piece. So I just wanted to lift that up and for staff to look into that. And then I can always connect staff to whoever that person was that said that, so that they can explain it better than I am doing right now. So, but that's actually it. That's all the stuff I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
Thank you. Also pretty brief for me today. Thanks to everyone who reached out to gently tell me I was looking terrible a couple of weeks ago. I got really sick, but I appreciate everyone who has reached out, and especially to Carriel and to Sylvia, who were totally me for about 7 business days there, so thank you so much. Great news on our community schools front. Mayor Pro Tem and Councilor Flores, and it will be, as fellow board members, will be especially happy to hear, we are going to have our 7th community school here in the city. That'll be Conley Elementary, right on the border of mine and Councilor Abeta's districts. So just absolutely wonderful that we're growing our community schools pipeline. Congratulations to the community schools staff who made this happen, and we're really hoping to get a high school in that community schools pipeline, hoping to see that in the next couple of school years. And then on a personal note, I'm going to bring this up now in case things don't go the way I need them to go on Sunday, but to all the Cowboys fans out there, my team made the Super Bowl. So just going to give a quick E-A-G-L-E-S, Eagles. Wow. I know. And Ifo, you wanna sing the song with me? Oh no. All right.
I'm excited for the Rihanna
But no,
concert.
and yes, and the Rihanna concert, which I'm sure that's what everyone is most excited about for the Super Bowl. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, didn't realize you were that talented. Councilor Abeta.
Thank you, Mayor. Today we had a University District Citizens Design Committee where there was a request for, there's going to be a new Starbucks over on the other side of basically Lorenzo's. And in the coming months, it looks like we'll have a few more meetings on new items that are happening in the area. We will also have a University Waterline Project meeting tomorrow from 5:30 to 7 at Corbett Center Student Union, 3rd floor in the Senate chambers, to give an update on that water project line. So thank you to Public Works as well for that. We had a quality of life meeting a week ago, maybe a week and a half already, where we did see the noise ordinance, and there is no recommendation on it based on some findings, and that will be coming to council as a full. I know that with oversight, one of the information items that we had was the start of the new Inspector General. I believe he was able to meet most everybody right before the meeting, and I don't want to steal Mr. Peely's thunder if he was going to announce more about that, so I'll move on quickly. I am a little concerned about one of the items that we had for public comment today, that about the request for the memorial for the child who was killed at Veterans Park. In some of the conversations that we've had about Veterans Park, I know there's been a lot of concern about even children in the area, and there's been a little, to be honest, I felt hostility against kids being included in this zone, and I think from members of that board. So that to me is something I just have in the back of my mind. I'm a little concerned about that too, especially given these types of requests. Mr. Peely. I don't know if there's something that we can do to just look in. Christine, I would love to see term limits to see when those individuals are up as well. So thank you.
Okay, city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just some from our economic development department, just an update on the storefront repair program. There's already 30 applications in the queue, and they're working with those businesses. So it looks like it's going to be a really good program and helpful to these businesses. Also, I have here just a list of projects from Public Works that are coming, and these projects are listed on our Capital Improvements Projects tab on the Public Works page. But in fact, I think moving forward, I'll bring some projects as part of my city manager's report, just some of these projects that I think the public would be interested in, and certainly in your areas. But we're starting off with streets here because that's a big one, especially this time around. I know you're probably getting emails and you can direct them to that page. But here's some of the projects that you probably already know about, but just for the record here. University Avenue water line, of course, and mill and overlay project. That's going to start late February, early March. About 140 working days is going to be the timeline. And that project is Torrentine Drive to Travis Drive. That's the project limits. There's the first meeting's on the 7th, 5:30, and then there's one in July to be determined. And then the pavement replacement phase, phase 2B, it's going to start in spring and over the course of 90 working days. And I'll go ahead and read these ones, but you can have reference to them on the capital projects page. But Anita Drive to Darlene Drive to Mulberry Avenue, and Anita Court to Anita Drive to cul-de-sac, Custer Way to Cody Drive to the cul-de-sac, Laramie Drive, Cheyenne Drive to Cheyenne Drive, Oleander Drive, Desert Drive to Market Street, Perry Ann Drive, Mulberry Avenue to Anita Drive, Bellama Drive, South Walnut Street to Stoll Drive, North Alamedra Street, North Virginia Street to East Hadley Avenue. And that's going to be, like I said, in the next, starting in spring, there's about 90 working days for that. And then the striping maintenance project will begin, and this is going to include all city streets with existing striping starting on Loman Avenue. And that's going to be over the next 6 months, started late January. Started late January, and it will continue for the next 6 months. So just wanted to point that out. Appreciate Public Works getting me this information, but as you get calls, you can point them to that capital projects page. But I'll be bringing reports on some of our projects that might be of interest to you and use this time for that. Thank you.
That's it. All right, well, if there's nothing further, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second by Flores.
Motion made by Councilor Beta, second by Councilor Flores that we adjourn. Christine?
This is on the motion to adjourn the meeting. Councilor Beta?
Yes.
Councilor Graham?
Yes.
Councilor Bencomo?
Yes.
Councilor Cran?
Yes.
Councilor Flores?
Yes.
Councilor Gondara?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, we're adjourned. It's 4:17 p.m. Thank you.